Alrighty, good evening, everybody. Today is Thursday, April 17th, 2025. It is 7:35 thereafter. Here on the second floor hearing room of the Newbury Municipal Offices in 12 Kent Way, Byfield, Mass. Here tonight we have Chrissy Beaupre, who is our administrative assistant. We have Mario Cannavale, who is a member. We have Michelle Wheeler, who is an associate member. We have Jack Kelly, who is a member. We have Larry Murphy, who is our planning board liaison, and I am Eric Spahn, the chair. So, with that.
Okay, first up, Al Ward, 80 Northern Boulevard. The applicant is requesting a special permit finding for relief of section 97-4D 5C01, increase in square footage, and 02, upward extension of the Newbury zoning bylaws, and any other permit relief as may be required under the town of Newbury zoning bylaws to allow the proposed use project in order to raise the existing dwelling on the lot while keeping the garage and the construction of a new single-family dwelling on pilings on the property located at 80 Northern Boulevard, Plum Island, Newbury, Mass. 01951, Assessors Map U03, Lot 181. And this is continued from 321. The applicant has submitted revised site plans requested during the last hearing, received on 4/10/25.
Excellent. The applicant?
David Garrett of Dalton and Feingold on behalf of the applicant. You are all very familiar with this, I think, at this point, so I'll run through the slides very quickly, just so you just see the pictures and refamiliarize yourself. Is somebody, do you want me to stand over here, or is somebody able to click the buttons? It's up to, I can do either. I'm fine, I'm happy to stand over there if you'd like, or sit over there if you'd like.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you, Chrissy. Okay. So whenever you're ready, you can just click to the next slide, please. Oh, and one thing I'll note before we get started. So part of the revised plans that were mentioned was the removal of the garage. Right? When you had read the the announcement, that it was our original plan was to keep the garage. We will not be removing the garage, or that is our plan. Okay, so this is just an overhead shot of Northern Boulevard. The red pin there is the location of the subject site. Next slide. Oh no.
I'm sorry, David.
That's okay.
There we go.
Okay. There's the house. Showing the house and the dunes and the large beach up to the ocean. Next slide. This is just overhead. The house is the blue house there. The garage, as you can see, it's a rather large garage in Breezeway. That's all being removed. Obviously, the rest of the house is also being raised and reconstructed, but the garage was originally going to stay, leaving the house much closer to that very large dune on the right, that wonderful dune, and that was, when we were here last time, was a large point of discussion. The neighbor next door on the other side of the dune was rightly very concerned about protecting that dune because it protects the houses in the neighborhood. We are now going to be removing the garage to slide the house away from the dune and leave no impact on that dune. We've made that adjustment to the plan. As much as the homeowners wanted to keep the garage so that they could have indoor car storage and protect the vehicles from the ocean, from the salt water, they have now decided to help allay the concerns of the neighbors to remove the garage so that we can move the house away from the dune. Next slide. Just another view. You can see here the garage with the house. Take note of the sort of the space between the garage and the house, which is driveway and paved asphalt, which is available for parking. I don't know how often cars were parked there, but is available for parking on the existing conditions. Next slide. Just looking up and down this is looking south down Northern Boulevard. Next slide. And now looking north up Northern Boulevard. Next slide. So here's existing and proposed conditions. The existing conditions, obviously, you're all familiar with those. Prior proposal, that is when we were here last time, that was what we called our alternate proposal, which moved the house closer to the street at the sort of, that was at the request of or through discussions with the abutter. We had initially thought the house, we were trying to move the house farther away from the street, but that, to bring it into compliance with zoning, but that caused the house to be closer to the dune. And so in an effort to, again, allay the concerns of the abutter, we had moved the house back closer to the street to pull the corner of the house out of the dune. The new proposal, because the garage is no longer on the property, would no longer be on the property, the house moves more centrally located on the lot. One thing you'll notice, the coverage area goes down significantly because the garage was 1,000 square feet of impervious surface that is now removed. So our proposal goes down to 11.13%, well within the required coverage area. FAR stays the same because the garage was not included in the FAR calculation per your bylaw. The front setback goes back to 21.8, so comes within the required 20 feet. Side setback, that goes from 0, it was actually like a -4 feet because the garage, if you remember, was built over the property line into the right-of-way down to the beach. So with the garage removed, that northern side yard setback now comes into compliance. It's 10 feet was required, we go to 10.8. And the other side yard setback is where we were very close to the dune. I can't remember what the number was exactly, but it goes to about, I think the number's like 36 feet. I don't remember exactly, but 34. Okay, thank you. So we come, and then the rear setback goes to 117.2. So we are fully in compliance with all setbacks as required in the district. Bedrooms remain at 4, and the height goes to 33, which is the same as the prior proposal, but under the 35-foot limit for the Plum Island Overlay District. Next slide, sorry. We can skip through this one. This is just the relief requested, nothing has changed. So again, just to refamiliarize yourselves with this is the existing conditions map, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, but shows the garage over the lot line. And next slide. This is the original proposal where we had the garage remaining, and the house was, I can't see that from here, but the house was about 14.4 feet from the southern side yard lot line, which was in compliance, but now on the next slide you'll see we moved the house up to the location of largely where the garage and where the garage was now, and the side yard setbacks on both sides come into compliance. And then you can flip to the next slide. Yeah, these haven't changed. So that's largely. Thank you, Chrissy. I think we're all set. So yeah, just to sort of sum up, what we're planning is now I think our 4th or 5th revision of the original plan, and through what we feel were very legitimate concerns about the safety and the health of that dune. We have very much revised the plan solely with the goal of protecting that dune. We've now moved the house and the construction completely out of the dune and far away from the dune in order to, again, try and allay the concerns of what we've heard from abutters. We've heard at the meetings, what we've heard at Conservation Commission. To that point, Conservation Commission met on Tuesday, and there was approved the plan from a Conservation Commission from their perspective. The state has signed off. The DEP to the state has signed off. And yeah, so anyway, that's largely everything that we've done so far. I think that we've done everything we can to try and get a house that we think fits the neighborhood, is designed on pylons according to all industry standards for coastal development, lifts the house out of any potential storm surge, removes the garage, which was going to be the only remaining structure that would have been subject to storm surge. We've removed that entirely, which was something we did really want to keep, but again, we're trying to be good neighbors and trying to satisfy all the concerns that we've heard so far. So that's all I have, unless the board has any questions.
I do have one comment to note.
Sure.
That the application says 115 115.9 feet for the rear setback. Your site plan says 115.9 feet for your setback. Your presentation was for the previous 117.3. Just,
Okay, I'll take a look at that. The site plan is definitely correct.
Right.
So if the site plan says 115, then I would say that is correct.
site plan and the application match.
Yep, okay.
Presentation.
Apologies for the discrepancy.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yes, just continue, I got a couple here.
Okay.
So we received the new site plan.
Yep,
Okay. The building plans and elevations have not changed.
correct. The
Okay.
design of the structure has not changed.
The
It's just moved on the lot.
application says that the proposed height is 33 feet.
Uh-huh.
The drawing that we received last time says 30 feet to the roof mid-height.
To the roof mid-height?
Yep.
I'm not an engineer, I don't know if that refers to the peak.
So the zoning says that the height of the roof is to the midpoint of the highest roof. And so you have one roof across the entire, it's listed 30 feet. The total height from grade would be 33 feet. So I think the application saying 33 feet in height should really just say 30 feet.
Okay. Okay, we can, my understanding, when I filled out the application, I was indicating what I thought was correct, which would be the actual tallest point of the house.
We go to the definition of the height.
Sure, fair enough.
And then the site plan, the new site plan, this one,
Uh-huh.
does not show paved area on the front of it.
Okay, the paved area that isn't being covered with the house, so basically the paved area along the street that goes, exists in front of the existing house to the garage, the plan is that will remain. And Conservation Commission has signed off on that and said that as long as it's the existing improvements, it's fine. We can't rip it up and install anything new, but we can leave it as is and we can maintain it. Now, there still is a significant reduction in paved area because of the area that is going to be built over by the house. Underneath the house, there will be a stone area for driving the cars into, but that, my understanding, is like a loose stone, crushed rock, which will be a pervious, base, as opposed to the impervious asphalt, which is there now. So we do end up with a significant reduction in impervious area between that and the garage, which was over 1,000 square feet of space on slab, on concrete slab. So it's a significant reduction in impervious.
And did COMCOM specify the number of parking spots?
I was not at Concom. My understanding is that there was a discussion about parking spaces, and we can certainly get into that if you have any questions, or if there's, if any of the abutters have any comments or concerns or questions about parking, we can listen to their concerns and then discuss it however you like. If you have questions about parking, happy to get into it.
Okay, those are my
Okay.
questions.
My understanding of the Conservation Commission meeting is that there was a discussion of parking, and then Concom approved the plan as is.
Okay.
Is all the parking's underneath the home?
The parking is underneath the home and on that paved area. Exactly. Obviously there's a area in front of the home, in front of the parking lots, the parking spaces under the home, because you have to be able to drive to it. But the intent is that the parking will be under the home. The area in front is just, an access way to it. Yeah. Now, I'm sure at Thanksgiving there might be cars parked there, but the intent is that the parking the applicant Al and his wife, they'll have 2 cars and they will park 2 cars under the house.
And you can't add any new pavement.
Yes, we cannot add any new pavement. We can only leave what is there.
So in actuality, this with one line missing, the paving is showing on this.
Okay.
Okay, Mario?
The only other thing I would note, actually, because we're talking about it, I have seen, there have been some emails and comments from the abutters, and there's been some concern as to what the use of the property is, and I just want to reiterate, as I said last time, the wards are investing a significant amount of money into this property with the full intent that this is their primary home. That's what they're doing here. They wouldn't be investing this much money in a house to rent it out to be destroyed by renters. This is a primary residence. That is the intent, and they're excited to live there. Yep.
Thanks. Mario?
No, I was just curious about the parking too. Do we have a definition then? It's just gonna be the parking under the house on the crushed rock, right?
That will be the day-to-day parking, yeah. I mean, again, there is the remaining paved area, which presumably you can park a car on, and there will be the area in front of what we'll call a driveway up to the parking, which presumably you could stop a car on.
Okay.
But the idea is that the everyday parking is under the house.
Okay.
This is all permanently paved.
Oh,
If the house sits in here, then this will all be removed. This is the only piece that.
okay, right, from my picture, yeah.
And that's pretty similar to a regular garage, where if you've got 2 big garage, you've got 2 spots in the garage and 2 in front, it's essentially 4.
Essentially, yes. Michelle?
I don't have any questions right now. I mean, I think, yeah, obviously, the new plan is different in terms of the old site plan showing the pilings and the car bays, because, you know, you had a car bay shown over here, which obviously you can't get to anymore.
Again,
You're
and
only keeping the
Yeah.
paved area.
sorry to cut you off, and that was also removed at the request of the abutter. The abutter was concerned about cars being, parked too close over to the dune, and so we've removed that whole front area. And I shouldn't say just at the request of the abutter, I believe it was also a comment at Concom. The group decided that was not the best use of that space, and so the parking has been removed, and that will remain sand on that side.
I don't have any other questions.
And my only question was about the height, the chairman addressed it, and I'd just like to note that it's odd, the building shifted, but it's perfectly flat, it's all in the same, if you look at the topos, it's perfectly flat, so the height didn't change.
Right.
I'm happy.
Take comments first. and then
You first.
Okay, so we have 2 comments that.
Sure. Yeah. Do you want me to stay here, or?
You can sit.
Okay.
Okay, to the ZBA, subject ward amendment requested by Jerry and Bobby Klima, 75 Northern Boulevard, date April 17, 2025. 1, do not allow additional parking under the new house under their revised plan. The wards will have 4 parking spaces on the existing paved parking area. They are also proposing to add 4 additional parking spaces under the new house. This is an excessive amount of parking because the ward's entire property is in the FEMA V zone. Under Newbury bylaw 95-4, a no new development shall be permitted in a FEMA V zone. Under section 95-3B4, development includes construction of newer proposed expansion of driveways or parking lots. Section 95-3D16, which allows creation of 2 new parking spaces for properties that have no existing parking, making it clear that construction of new parking areas in V zone properties that already have 2 parking spaces, like the wards, is new development. Therefore, the entire proposed hardscape parking area under the new house is prohibited and should not be allowed. Allowing the wards to create new parking area of 4 additional cars under the new house will be substantially detrimental to the neighborhood because it will facilitate use of the house as an Airbnb rental house, which the wards have done for years with the existing house. One of the purposes of the PIOD is to prevent exacerbation of existing problems with density and intensity of use. Allowing a homeowner who already has 4 existing parking spaces to create 4 additional spaces by raising the home higher than necessary is contrary to the purpose of the PIOD and to bylaw section 95-4. Imagine what Plum Island would look like and feel like if many more houses were elevated to create additional parking underneath. Newbury voters approved a bylaw restricting this, and the ZBA should honor it too. Require the wards to reduce the height of the new house. The wards proposed new house is substantially taller and more bulkier than the existing homes and will adversely affect the ocean views of the neighbors across the street. The proposed new house is 33 feet high, 12 feet higher than the existing house. If the ZBA finds that the additional parking on the house is not permitted, we also request that the ZBA require the height of the new house to be reduced by 5 feet. This would give a 5-foot safety margin above the base flood elevation and would reduce the elevation of the top of the roof from 50.58 feet to 45.58 feet, reducing the height and mass of the building and lessening its detrimental impact on the neighborhood.
Do you want me to make any comments to that, or just the only one quick comment? The only comment I would make is that section 95 of the bylaw that is referenced in that letter multiple times is the wetland bylaw, which is the purview of the Conservation Commission, and they've already voted to approve this project.
Okay, thanks. This is from Joyce Venning Morgan. Dear members of the Newbury Zoning Board, I write as a co-owner with my daughter, Catherine Irene Tira Morgan of 81 Northern Boulevard, a resident across the street from the property under discussion. I share the concerns of Jerry and Bobby Klima. I see no reason why any residence in a one-family residential zone needs 8 parking spaces, especially since it contravenes the Newbury bylaws as quoted by the Klima's letter. 4 of the parking spaces will be created by establishing a small new parking lot underneath the proposed new construction at 80 Northern Boulevard by raising the house a good 5 feet higher than necessary for building the house itself. The current house already has 4 parking spaces on an existing paved area, double what the bylaw stipulates as the basic need for parking. My concern is that the intent of the owners to rent the property to large groups, as they have already done, the detriment to the neighborhood from a large number of vacationers has indeed already been felt. Joyce Finning Morgan.
Is there another one?
There is. This is from Kira Morgan. I write on behalf of myself and my mother, Joyce Finning Morgan, with whom I co-own the abutting property at 81 Northern Boulevard. We have strong concerns about the ward's current proposal to rebuild their home, particularly the plan to increase the height from the existing 21 feet to 33 feet. This significant increase would severely compromise the light and views that our property and its long-standing garden depend on. The plan to elevate the structure 10 feet above the grade to accommodate parking beneath further amplifies this impact. While we understand the need for storm resilience, the height goes well beyond prevailing scale and character of the neighborhood, which lies on the narrowest and most exposed stretch of the island. In the 111 years that our family has owned 81 Northern Boulevard, we have witnessed firsthand destructive forces of coastal forms now intensified by climate change. A taller, bulkier home raised above ground level and set further into the dune could exacerbate risk to adjacent properties, the street, and shared utility infrastructure. Beyond practical concern, we asked the committee to consider the architectural rhythm of our neighborhood. The proposed structure, scale, and orientation would depart dramatically from the home that defined this stretch of the island and reflect decades of care, community, and history. While we recognize that the ward's house is in need of repair, we respectfully ask the committee to consider a revision that meets resilience needs without imposing disproportionate effects on the surrounding area. This is not just a matter of preserving views, but of maintaining integrity and balance of neighborhoods that has enjoyed through generations. Thank you for your attention and consideration. Morgan. Thank
All right. Other people here in the audience that would like to speak in favor? There are people in the audience that would like to speak against. I'll take the gentleman in the green vest in the back. Sorry.
Should that come up?
Sure. Please state your name and address.
Jerry Klima, with my wife and I own the 75 Northern Boulevard across the street. The main issue well, first of all, I appreciate that the wards have made a lot of beneficial changes to their plan, and that's true. I think that the one remaining significant issue from our point of view is the amount of parking. There is a bylaw, it's in the wetlands bylaw, and the Conservation Commission took the position that they're not concerned about additional parking under the building. It doesn't count. I really just disagree with that interpretation. I think that the impact, the density, the impact on the overall use of the property is very significant with additional parking. It is a town bylaw, and I think that the zoning board should interpret it yourself, think about it, think about the impact under the PIOD, and if you disagree with what the Conservation Commission determines, ask town council to see what they think about its applicability to properties in the V zone. It only affects properties in the V zone. I think that is something that you really should think hard about, because it has a big impact, not just on the use of the property, but on neighbors as well. And under your standard of whether the project is substantially detrimental to the neighborhood, you have a bylaw that says there shouldn't be additional parking created on V zone houses if they already have two. You should be really thinking about it and applying it. Thank you.
All right, next person.
Good evening, Jeff Roloffs. I represent Tim and Ann and Drost, who live next door to the south, the immediate abutters adjacent to the dune that you saw in the photos that has come to be a robust coastal dune feature that lies in between their two properties. And as you know from my previous presentation, protecting that dune is my client's biggest priority. When my clients reconstructed their home next door, the guidelines, the local guidelines and state guidelines were strictly enforced. They had to get a team of experts involved with the design of their project. They had to be involved during the construction, the demo and construction activities. A lot of the work they did was by hand, had to stay within their footprint. Everything was strictly controlled. They did it. It was aggravating, but they were also happy to see that they were moving and building in an area that had strict guidelines. They've also spent a lot of money to enhance that dune and to help it, to nourish it over the years, as we've talked about before. The concern that we've expressed, the main concern that we've expressed from the beginning to the board, to the commission, and to the applicants team is protection of that dune, and the concern that we had that they haven't included during their design process any coastal scientist qualified to evaluate the impacts of the demolition, the elevated building over time on the dune. And the burden to prove that they're meeting these wetlands performance standards is on the applicant. I don't think they can meet that burden. Obviously, the Conservation Commission disagreed with us. But it goes to the substantial detriment issue also. It's a zoning issue. So we think they have a burden of showing that what they're proposing is not going to adversely impact these really sensitive and important natural features out here that provide protection not just to my clients but to the neighborhood. The wards have made improvements to their project over the course of these proceedings, incrementally. They've accepted some of our suggestions, but they've also rejected quite a few of them. What we expressed as being a sort of a baseline, easy improvement that the wards declined to implement and the commission declined to require was some vegetated plantings after construction around the house. So the way it's going to work is they're going to take all those structures out, they're going to install a new structure, elevated, stones underneath the building, and then all the disturbed areas around that building are going to be backfilled with sand. No vegetative planting whatsoever. No long-term protection to make sure that those areas aren't going to be used for fire pits, pedestrian access, or whatever. Nothing to help protect the longevity of these natural resources. And we think that's a significant flaw. And we don't think because of that and not having a qualified professional involved who's a coastal scientist that can really evaluate the impacts here, We don't think they've met their burden of proof under the wetlands bylaw or the zoning standard of demonstrating that this will not result in substantial detriment to the neighborhood. The last thing I'll just point out is, I do think the neighbors, I know my clients would be thrilled if the Wards built this and lived here. You can't assume we hope that's gonna happen, and it may for some period of time. I don't think it's right for the ZBA to put too much weight in that unless you're planning to impose a condition that limits this to owner occupancy only. There's nothing to prevent them from renting it short-term to, two families or whatever with lots of vehicles through the summer months. Then you shouldn't assume it's not gonna happen. I mean, it's set up for a perfect, it will be set up with all the parking they will have, 8 spaces easily, as a perfect rental for large group outings. So again, unless there's a condition that they're willing to accept or a deed restriction or something like that, I just don't think the board should put too much weight in that. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
We'll just take a couple minutes tonight. I know you guys spent, I would say to you that we drove up here tonight, it's been, I want to keep in mind that this has been a 5-year process, and we've been here many nights with having to argue about projects that are so far out the guidelines and dealing with different, wards attorneys and, it's 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, illegal stuff. So keep that in mind that we spent 5 years going back and forth with a project just to get to this point that has some good guidelines to it, and it cost us a tremendous amount of money. But also keep in mind that when we purchased our home just 14 years ago, that beach wasn't there. The town spent millions of dollars replenishing the beach behind our house. They were filling that behind. The state came in and put sand dune fencing there, and when we walked behind our house, there was a cliff that you would walk off to the beach. So me and the neighbor to the right, have spent an incredible amount of money planting dune grass and continuing to put sand fences up and protect that house. Just 50 years ago, the water broke through, the ocean broke through between me and the Ward's house and flooded the street of Northern Boulevard. So while it looks perfect right now, that dune has, if we show you the pictures in the past 14 years, the dune between our houses has grown. It wasn't there, or was half of what it is today in 14 years. But we're well aware that can disappear overnight. And not only do we own a home, we feel that us being blessed to have a house on ocean front, that we have some responsibility to not just our property, but to everybody to take care of that property and protect that dune for generations. And putting up a house up on piers and moving it away from the dune, I don't want anybody to be fooled. The reason why this plan got changed because DEP put a whole bunch of notes that weren't going to go through. And we also feel at this point that there is some errors in what this move forward, and not, unfortunately for us, this is going to continue after this hearing. Putting up a house on piers and not having a wetland scientist, because the house going up on piers severely affects the wind action on the dune next to it. And all we ask multiple times, just have that study to make sure that that's protected. The other purpose of having a house elevated is for sand to move freely underneath the house, which is what happened with our house. We had a basement in our house, and they made us take it out, fill it by hand, so the sand could flow freely under our house. Our house is on piers, but they would not let us drive underneath the house because they want the sand and for that dune to grow. And I would tell you that they were right, because if you look at my house, it's got a perfect horseshoe around it. The dune has grown, everything has grown. Now look at the Ward's house, behind their house. Now they're gonna build a new house, and I appreciate that they want to say that they want to live there, and I take them at their word. And if they do want to do that, then they understand that driving underneath the house affects the sand movement. It's going to damage the dune. It's going to undermine that. The other thing is, already got plenty of parking spaces. There's more than 4 parking spaces with the pavement that they're leaving. The dune should, underneath the house, we shouldn't have cars underneath that. The sand should flow freely so it can continue to replenish the dune. But I might be wrong about that. But we feel that there is definitely some argument to that, and that's why we request that this has a wetland scientist study this, because whether they move the house away from the dune, there is plenty of studies today explaining what happens, and there are actually a lot of coastal engineers are going separately saying we shouldn't bring the houses up, that they should sit low, so you create a horseshoe around the house and it doesn't scour the dune. But there's a bunch of case studies saying by raising the house, it scours the dune and it'll undermine that dune that's been growing. So we love the words to fix the house. That's fantastic. But what we're asking is to keep this in mind. We got all this pavement in front of there. They're keeping a lot of pavement. They can park 4 cars. One, there's no reason to park cars underneath the house. That is 100% going to affect this dune. And we're not in a suburban neighborhood. We're in a velocity zone on the narrowest piece of land on the island. You're asking to expand the parking, which is beyond the rights. Again, I'm well aware this is going to continue, unfortunately for us, after this. But what we really wanted to say is, we do, both me, my wife and I, have a high regard for the time that you spent to take and listen to our concerns over these past few years. And we wanted to tell you personally that we appreciate you hearing what we had to say. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question, Mr. Drost?
Yes.
When you said that they made you fill in the cellar by hand and let the sand flow through, who was they?
The building inspector and the Conservation Commission, Doug Packard at the time. Yeah, so we had the house, had a basement, furnace, when we didn't rip the house down. We actually made our footprint a little bit smaller. The house was already on piers, and then they had built a basement around it. All the houses are on piers.
So it was a conservation thing, not so much a zoning thing? That's
I think it was
Yeah.
a combination because we weren't changing the house, right? So we kept the existing house because we thought that that was going to be the least amount of stress on the property.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would
Just make a couple
Speak.
quick comments.
make the closing comments here?
Just with a couple of quick things. There's been some discussion about additional parking being added. I would actually disagree with that. I think that the existing parking the number of spaces is about the same as what it is now. Chrissy, do you mind flipping to the end of my slides? I pulled a couple slides from a presentation that Attorney Roloffs gave to the Concom, one before that.
Oh, sorry.
So in this slide, per Attorney Roloff's counts, he said there were 6 spots, but that fails to note that there's 2 spots in the garage. So by his own count, there were 8 spots. I don't even think that I would call those all 8 spots because, one, they're smaller than I would call a parking space, but also, when you look at the line of three parking spaces, if this was a 100-foot long driveway, would we call the whole driveway parking spaces? Of course not. You have to have a way to drive back to the parking space. I don't know if we'd call what's in front a parking space. So moving to the next slide.
So you just rip out the pavement then, and put grass there.
Here where we have, again, the ward's intent is to park 1 car in each bay under the house. So I would call that 2 parking spaces, but given the size, maybe you could squeeze 2 in. But again, the spaces in front of those, it's necessary access to get back to the parking space. So to call them parking spaces, I mean, sure, you could stop a car on it, but I think it acts as any other driveway. So my count there is that there's, 8, at maximum, that's 8, which is what's currently existing. I don't think we're adding any spaces by maximum count, but my view is that there's actually fewer than 8 in both current and proposed. So I just wanted to note that. And then it also, Attorney Roloff's pointed out that we can't assume that the owners or subsequent owners never going to use this for rental. That's a fair point. We also can't assume that they are. You have to take it as it is today and what we're planning. And, I just want to reiterate again, 100% the plan here is for the Wards to live in this house, permanent residents, full-year residents, and live here in retirement. Al, do you have anything, or are you all set?
I can reassure you.
No, I just want to double check.
But
Okay,
other than that, I don't really have anything.
okay, that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so from the presentation of new information of the site plan, updated application, original building elevations and floor plans, several letters of opposition that bring up parking, bring up height, bring up some issues with the dune. That's what we're before us for discussion. You guys have, I guess, something to say?
Well, the height thing's, we're halfway there.
Yeah.
The applicant asked for 5 feet. Mr. Kleeman, I think, asked for 5 feet, and we already found 3. So now it's 32 feet, 30 feet instead of 33. So I think we're kind of, that's not extreme for Plum Island.
It's not maxing it out.
Right.
It's-
5 feet under the max.
Okay. Anything else, Jack, or?
Nope, believe it or not. Still miss the breezeway, but I'm willing to sacrifice that.
I'd just be curious if any of the coastal stuff was discussed at COMCON, what their thought was. It seems like they didn't have a problem with
So, COMCOM did review this. You guys were at the COMCOM meeting?
Yeah,
I would just say that I would tell you, me personally, I was on both the meetings. The inconsistencies from one project to the next is incredible, but we'll, again, I know that we're not here to relitigate the count, we're gonna handle that tomorrow. But,
So,
there's super inconsistencies, and what we feel is outside of the guidelines. They're asking for 8 parking spots. We don't feel that, I understand that there's some feeling that there's some grandfather, but that's not the way that we read the law. And once, let's not forget, the garage was illegal in the first place, right? So we've already been through this back and forth, it's moving from the property, and now it's assumed that it's supposed to be there. There's plenty of parking in the front. We all park in front of our houses, all of us. If you're building a 3-bedroom house, you don't need 8 cars to park. So, adding the parking under the house causes an issue for exasperation to the neighborhood. You're parking more stuff there. I mean, that's the whole purpose of not overbuilding in the neighborhood. That's unfortunately, I'm sure it's clear. If they want to park underneath the house, and that will get passed once this goes to DEP, then remove the pavement and plant grass and dunes so it continues to make the whole goal for building new construction is to make the site better. And it's their burden to prove that. That's what we feel. But parking cars under the house and leaving all the pavement, yes, they're removing some of the pavement because they're building a house on it, and then driving cars that completely take away the benefit of having a house elevated. I mean, it's like a clown show. I mean,
can I just add though, because I don't want you to think that that was our key issue with the CONCOM, because it really isn't. It was, the commission didn't require the involvement of a wetlands professional. There was none, neither by the applicant's team, nor did the commission require peer review, which it's doing for the Plum Island Grove project, which has no natural resources on it. So that's part of the inconsistency that Tim's referring to. And two, although they had at one point proposed some mitigation plantings, they totally took that off of their plan when they were instructed by DEP to take the garage down, and they just backed off of any plantings. So there's not one plant being proposed here as part of this project. Some of the commission members said, yeah, I would like to see plantings here, but they ended up voting in favor of this without requiring any plantings or or even long-term protection measures such as fencing to prevent people from using the sandy areas for whatever you might.
So let's not be
So-
clear, it's not an improvement. The house is improved, the quality of the building is improved, but that site and the way that's moved around is not improved, because there is a whole bunch of studies that elevating a house causes issues with
We
it.
hear you.
And parking cars underneath, and having parking,
And we've said multiple times, you know, that Conservation Commission isn't our purview. We do, if something seems inappropriate, then we will say, have you gone to COMCOM, or we'd like COMCOM to go in a linear, parallel process, because we really like to understand what they're gonna say. So, COMCOM has spoken. You guys have put a lot of effort, obviously, into that, and the wards have made a lot of changes on their house. So when we look at a project, and for every project, and you can look at some recent projects too, that site area, frontage, are usually the two consistent nonconformities that are, or that most of the lots have. And then after that, projects that have existing, or projects that are going new, or total rebuild, I should say, meet all the other dimensional requirements of the PIOD. So typically what we find favorable is if somebody is meeting all the dimensional requirements except for frontage and lot size, which they can't change, then they are equal and consistent to their neighbors and other properties. If somebody has an existing and they choose to use that existing and say, I have a pre-existing non-conforming, I'm going to use that line of that building to rebuild to, we have some issues where people present that, and then we look at how that then affects the neighborhood. Chrissy, if you go back to the aerial view, please. Thank you. You know, a lot has been done in terms of the building to improve it, in terms of it's 83 feet wide, it's 53 feet proposed, so the width is a lot smaller. The pavement is being reduced. There are a lot of favorable aspects that we would typically go over. The height is not maximized out. The parking seems to be the same. The pavement, as I just said, is less. The house next to it looks like it's got at least 6 spots. And so in considering the neighborhood, we are looking to make sure that the rights that are, that somebody is proposing and wants to build to are within the limits and are not any more than the adjacent neighbors would have.
I think it's, you know, that we feel that there's incredible improvements that were made, and we feel that it's, you know, it's getting close to the guidelines. With that said, understand the sensitivity in the area and where the house exactly is, and we just asked, and again, we'll deal with it. And I appreciate what you said, and again, I appreciate all the time and effort you did to explain it. Again, the area is super sensitive, and I don't, you know, nobody's gonna have conversations with me when we have issues and water's breaking through and that thing's receding again, and we've spent a whole bunch of time. So again, we asked for a professional where the location is. I appreciate that we're all professionals here, but because of the sensitivity of the area, and we'll address it separately, but I do appreciate your time, and I understand, and I think, you know, the house, the space on the lot, I think all that stuff is great, and we're excited about that, and the Wards live there, I'm happy for them. But with that said, super focused on protecting that, because just 14 years ago, it wasn't there, and we can see what's going on behind our house. So it's a lot of work for us to do, and putting cars underneath the garage and restricting sand flow could be a problem, right? I might be wrong, but that's why we want an engineer, and we think that a wetlands engineer should make that decision. That's the best for this particular location, directly on the ocean. So I appreciate you giving me time.
I just have a question are you guys totally against putting any vegetation in the plans?
We had some vegetation in the plans when we were disrupting vegetation. And when there's, like, basically everything that we're doing now is within a smaller footprint than the house currently sits in. So the plan is to put sand instead of vegetation, which the DEP and conservation agree with and accepted. So that's what the plan is.
You pitch your thoughts. I mean, putting vegetation behind the house, me and my neighbor, putting sand fences in over the past 14 years, that's what you get. Putting sand behind the house, that's what you get. It's thousands.
We've heard you. We're not, we're not wetland scientists, we're not Concom,
Right.
so I understand it. I will say for the rental versus owner occupied, we do appreciate hearing about that. We're all Newbury residents, trying to help properties that are Newbury residents, but we don't really place stock in that, because something could change. And the intent of the zoning and the intent of the building code is to make something level so that somebody doesn't go off on a tangent and do something that isn't within keeping with everybody else for what that project is. So that's why we have the zoning bylaws, that's why we have building codes. So we hear you, but I don't take too much stock in whether it's owned today or rented today. Everyone's got the right to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we got through the height, I think we got through the owner rental occupied question. I do think that even though, in the question of the views, I would say in terms of other proposed, that the width has come down greatly from what is existing, and the height is lesser than being maximized. It does seem like we get some applications sometimes where they take and do the math backwards to see exactly how big to the inch they could get the house from the lot size, and so it's nice to see somebody that isn't maximizing out. I would say that the height is not an issue. So that leaves us down to the questions of parking, the questions of planting, and the questions of dune erosion, which isn't really our purview, but we could do, I think, one of two things. We could ask for a wetland scientist to look at this as one option, or we could conditionally say how we find this, but maybe hold it in order to have a discussion with Concom to, I tried to log in last night, but I was late and couldn't hear it, so I don't know exactly what was said. But
Well, weren't these same issues addressed, because the one issue
Well, I
you
would say,
brought up? I'm assuming
unfortunately
you brought them
for
up
us,
last
they were-
night.
We did. We brought these same issues up last night. The commission basically, well, we got lectured on property rights and things like that. They disagreed with us that it was warranted, vegetation or involvement of coastal scientists. We disagree with that.
Yeah.
And you have the right to appeal that, of course.
We did.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I
No,
was
that's-
just trying to
that's-
clear it.
Can I ask a technical question? Because it does actually affect the parking. So in your original plans here that show the pilings at grade, and then even on this new site plan, you show pilings, something here, which means you're not parking in this car bed. You show them here too. So unless this is old,
The idea is to
These
park
two
in,
right here.
the idea is to park in between the pylons there.
No, no, you see these,
Oh,
you're
they're-
showing
they're-
these
they're-
Oh,
pilings,
those
or
little-
you're showing some pilings here.
It says optional case opening with lattice panel each side.
So that, we're assuming that's
Yeah,
not.
that, I don't, that's not a
Because
piling, the
it's
pilings are
here-
the larger square.
It's here as well, though. So there was something there.
I think that's one of our other concerns, because the plans are not complete or finalized. The property got,
Because to me, in this plan, this new one that you showed, you actually can't park under them.
Those two things there.
These are underground sewer
No,
water.
no, no, no,
These are
no.
not
No, those two little
These
squares.
piers right here.
The big squares are pilings, what are those?
They're also shown right here too, and I see that too, but there's no note on this or on the new plan, so there's just a little bit of confusion.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
if those really are there, no one's
Those are,
parking there
those are
anyways.
optional wooden, like 2x4s in order to
Okay,
install
so
that.
in this new plan, they're not there, they should be gone,
They
right?
are not there.
Sure. Yeah, those are not pilings.
So
Those
you
are-
can park under there.
Yes, those are not pilings. Those are-
Originally, this was gonna be parking here and here.
Yeah.
This was gonna be an optional place, but this is gonna be parking. This is gonna put some lattice in here, but now because these are blocked, this is not gonna be used.
That's fine, okay. So those will go, okay, so that's fine. I mean, are you open to potentially putting something here and here so that you can, you know, tandem park underneath there? Is that an option?
I don't see the need for it, and I have a large family, and I don't see the problem with having them park off the street when they do come over for holidays or gatherings in the summertime, especially since it's basically keeping the same amount of parking that I have now, you know, where it's a little more organized now. I mean, it's close, so a little more organized now, instead of like kind of twisting them into where they are in front of the breezeway and stuff now. But, you know, it's, and as far as the bylaw goes, I believe, one of the conservation officials said that he helped write the bylaw, he's very familiar with it, and was part of the decision that this was not against the bylaw.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, are we gonna rely on Concom? Are we gonna take a step further? We have not typically in the past run up against an issue of the site that we felt was not except for a 40B in which everything goes through us, and so therefore it's part of the process that goes through us. Larry, you're in the planning board. You're for the Concom? You're go back to the Concom?
Well, we're usually it's in the context of the site layout, stormwater management, that type of thing. If we try to follow what the Concom does for a subdivision, for example, to see if their restrictions might require an alteration of our plan, but we don't second guess them.
I just wanted to say that, you know, we're not, I'm involved in a tremendous amount of development and construction. If we're 100 feet from a wetland, we're not talking about velocity zone in the ocean. We have complete plans that are required by the state. The fact that this doesn't have to have that is so, it's unbelievable to me. And, I mean, you're talking about, that you're required to bring those plans forward, to have something complete. We're here, we have nothing. We got a house on piers with no wetlands, delineation, there's nothing, no plan at all. We have some grass planting. We already can clearly see, we know this is an area is super dangerous. I'm not trying to affect his property rights. There's nowhere in Massachusetts that this would go on. You're 100 feet in building into a wetland, you got all kinds of people required to be involved before we're even at this conversation.
So we,
This is, I understand where you're at. I'm just saying, to be at this, the conversation at conservation, where somebody's dictating because they feel like it for this property and feel differently, conservation's supposed to be looking at plans by professionals. And this is a super sensitive area. We want to park underneath the house. I mean, you need professionals. I appreciate property owners' rights, but this is a dangerous thing. And We already know what happened on Fordham Way 10 years ago, and everybody, when their house is falling in the ocean, and everybody's crying that they want the state to pay. I mean, at minimum, you need a wetlands person to determine it. It might be a perfect plan, but we're saying we need a professional in this super sensitive area. And let's not get it wrong. We are all blessed and having both me and Al Ward financially, since we have beautiful homes right on the ocean, we certainly both have the money to just pay for this and make sure it's right. That's, I mean,
So, we hear you.
Can I say one thing? I don't want to, I'm sorry to interrupt you. When you're done, can I?
You can speak now.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. I just want to say, in all deference to the concerns of the abutter, there were 4 separate Conservation Commission meetings. This has been hashed and rehashed and rehashed.
that is not correct. That's not, if you've been part of those conservation, it's not a two-way conversation.
Concom made a direct and unequivocal finding that a wetlands review was not necessary because this building is staying in the same footprint as the existing building.
Well, it's not, it's outside the footprint, you're moving it. You're moving the
And also,
bills.
also, it's a reduction by more than 1,000 square feet of the impervious surface on the property.
So we hear both sides.
Yep.
And I think to do, again, we have 2 actions. We can say that we're gonna trust the Concom and accept what they've done and not second guess them or not go outside the bounds. It is not our typical, but maybe we should consider or look into what the means would be, either for this or future applications for some additional study. But at this time, I would rely on the Concom for what they did.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable overruling them.
Yeah.
I'd be uncomfortable
We
them
hear- I mean, we
overruling
hear
us.
your argument.
It's a super sensitive area, and let's not get it wrong. We are all blessed and having both me and Al Ward financially, since we have beautiful homes right on the ocean, we certainly both have the money to just pay for this and make sure it's right. That's, I mean,
So, we hear you.
Can I say one thing? I don't want to, I'm sorry to interrupt you. When you're done, can I?
You can speak now.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. I just want to say, in all deference to the concerns of the abutter, there were 4 separate Conservation Commission meetings. This has been hashed and rehashed and rehashed.
that is not correct. That's not, if you've been part of those conservation, it's not a two-way conversation.
Concom made a direct and unequivocal finding that a wetlands review was not necessary because this building is staying in the same footprint as the existing building.
Well, it's not, it's outside the footprint, you're moving it. You're moving the
And also,
bills.
also, it's a reduction by more than 1,000 square feet of the impervious surface on the property.
So we hear both sides.
Yep.
And I think to do, again, we have 2 actions. We can say that we're gonna trust the Concom and accept what they've done and not second guess them or not go outside the bounds. It is not our typical, but maybe we should consider or look into what the means would be, either for this or future applications for some additional study. But at this time, I would rely on the Concom for what they did.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable overruling them.
Yeah.
I'd be uncomfortable
We
them
hear, I mean, we
overruling
hear
us.
your argument, and I think it's more Concom.
I understand. You want one of the,
So with that, with the understanding of what's before us, is there any other discussion on this? Any other thoughts about what does or doesn't need to be done?
The only thing that might, it sounds like it's gonna go to appeal no matter what, but one thing we have required in the past are some plantings, not from a wetlands perspective, but we do occasionally require plantings for screening or something. I think it would be, if that would solve some of the issues, some people's feelings will require some, but maybe that's out of our realm too. I don't know.
Well, brings up a good point of screening is something that we could dictate and mitigate. We could ask for plantings, but to the opposition, I'm not sure what we're asking for and what it's gonna do is.
It probably wouldn't be enough anyway, so.
One other thing to note, I'm sorry, is while the Concom approval did not require new plantings, to the extent that construction disrupts or removes any existing dune vegetation, Al will be required to replace it.
So, and we do have conditions we have required updated plans and applications and documentation to make sure they're all current and they're all coordinated. When we have lengthy processes where there's multiple issuances going back and forth, sometimes not everything is up to date. Sometimes we're very helpful and we cross out a number and write a number and we keep going forward. Other times we ask for a whole other set that needs to be reviewed. And obviously, there's always a condition that if anything does change between a decision and what is put in front of the building inspector, that any changes would then need to come back to us for review.
Do they need to update the plans for the height? Is that correct?
No, the height is,
That height is correct?
the height is correct, it's not correct on the application.
Okay.
So, I think, you know, should have asked for the corrected application. Is there any more discussion? Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a motion if there is one.
I make a motion to accept the proposal based on, addressing the non-conforming and making all the setbacks conforming. And if there's any adjustments on the height, it needs to be done to the application.
Okay, is there a second?
Second with, I think you should also take out the 2 wooden pillars that Michelle found, which was a good catch.
Okay,
They're on the
so,
construction plan. But yes, I second the motion as Mr. Carnavale said.
okay. Any other comments or conditions? So I think as of any motion that is made, that a complete set of updated application, building plans, site plans gets submitted and double checked to make sure it's all coordinated and labeled correctly. With that, is there all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it does pass. We do appreciate the opposition and people showing up and saying your piece, and hopefully we've given you enough time to get it out. We do appreciate applicants that work through a process and things change and evolve. Just aren't hard fast in terms of this is what I want to do and that's it kind of thing.
Sure.
So COMCOM is an interesting piece. I think we'll take that under discussion as a board as we move forward here. I think we all want the best for Plum Island, and we all want the best for each owner to have as much rights as they're equal to have for everybody else. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Okay. New public hearing, Mark Ferrari, Greencoat Hotel, Thai Realty LLC, represented by Attorney Jeffrey Rolfe, 2 Plum Island Boulevard. The applicant is requesting a special permit finding for relief from section 97-4J4, change of non-conforming use, and 97-4D, allowed use of single-family dwelling ratio regulations, 0.3 max floor area ratio, 0.4 lot coverage, Newbury zoning bylaws, and any other permanent reinvestment required under the town of Newbury zoning bylaws to allow the proposed use project in order to redevelop the properties, raising of all existing structures, removal of existing pavements and equipment, and construction of 4 residential townhomes within 2 house-supported buildings on the property located at 2 Plum Island Boulevard, map 01951, accessory map U02, lot 132.
Thank you. Jeff Roloff's representing the applicant here.
Yeah, we'll just give us one.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Let's clean, it's gonna take.
Yeah, no problem, because we're also setting up our slides. I was gonna ask you for a little, couple minutes here.
I want to pay for the shuffle down.
Got it. How you doing? Good. All right, thank you. Okay, we all set?
All set.
Is it okay if I present from here so I can control the slides? I think the slides will help. I hope so. I spent a lot of time on them. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. Again, Jeff Roloff, attorney for the applicant. Mark Freery, the manager of the entity that owns the property is here. Steve Sawyer with Millennium Engineering. Chris Crump, our architect. You're going to hear from all three of them tonight. I'm going to give a quick intro, get us oriented to the site, and then I'll turn it over to Mark. So, here we are. You're all familiar with the property. Just wanted, partly these are included in case we need to come back to them, but aerial of the intersection. I'll just point out there that the stop sign is up here, just to get oriented. A couple street views from Sunset, from Plum Island Boulevard. And then this is an aerial from 2023. It's a little bit different than the aerial from 24. Now these are reversed, these are flipped, but I wanted to show you this because Sunset's on the top, and that's the orientation of most of the plans that you're gonna see. So this is the most recent aerial, and we'll get back to that image as we get into the presentation here. I'm gonna turn it over to Mark, because we did have a neighborhood meeting a few weeks ago with the sort of direct abutters, and people seemed interested in just the background. Why are you proposing this? Why are you not doing a restaurant? So Mark's gonna introduce himself and explain to us a little bit of the background and why he came to the decision to propose what he's proposing now.
First, I'd like to thank the board as well as the audience for giving me this opportunity to present this plan. I appreciate that very much. As Jeff indicated, we did have an abutters meeting. It went very well. We did have one abutter, Jennifer, who's here, who expressed concerns about view, and we've already made a couple of efforts and proposals to try to ameliorate that as best we can. So to give a little bit of the background of why we're here and why we're needing to go in this direction. 27 years ago, I started the Plum Island Grill, and 8 years ago, I ended my involvement in the restaurant in favor of continuing only as the landlord. I was proud of our history, and I hoped it would live on beyond me for longer. Unfortunately, and as some of you may have observed, the last few years under a different management didn't go so well. Severe deterioration was allowed to accumulate and then led to a criminal felony charges brought against the former tenant for vandalizing the premises on the way out with the help of chainsaws. An expert has estimated the repair cost at $442,000. The premises are a wreck inside and out. The main dining room foundation has been compromised and one side has collapsed 18 inches down. The only economically feasible path forward is a new structure. A new restaurant building would need to update to current code. Handicap accessibility alone would require a ramp of at least 96 feet to enter the premises at a height of 8 feet at 1 inch per foot. An elevator additionally would be required. We feel that our considered opinion is that the cost is prohibitive for that use in that location. And of course, as time has gone by, it's brought us a newer and larger restaurant on the other side of the gateway to Plum Island. That restaurant, by the way, is 160 seats. Many of you will remember how busy we were back a few years ago and the level of cars and parking that were on that corner. We're 125. The new restaurant is 160. So imagine what happens if both restaurants are again busy. There's going to be a massive amount of cars, and we think that a bit less congestion might be a better option for the only gateway to Plum Island. We think the path forward least burdensome on the community and most economically feasible for a developer is a small multi-unit residential development, and our team is here to present this plan. Some of the issues that we will address are, of course, the deteriorating appearance. We hope to put a beautiful structure that is consistent with Plum Island on the site. There are a couple of safety issues that we would address. The lot is now mostly impervious, and there is a substantial ponding of water on the parking lot towards Sunset Boulevard, and that frequently ponds out into the roadway. Now, the town used to do a good job cleaning out the culvert there, and that ponding was significantly less. For whatever reason, in the past many years, that has not been happening. However, as you'll hear from our plan, we're going to render the majority of that lot pervious again, and we think that any ponding issue that's there now will then, at least in a major way, dissipate. There is a fadeaway corner that you saw on those drawings. The Plum Island Grill, in a settlement with the town quite a few years ago, reconfirmed their right to use the parking on that corner. And what that has done is it interrupted the town's prior plan to put in a sidewalk and more of an island there. The issue is that during the evening, restaurants are clearly using the parking over on Sunset Boulevard, but during the day, it's all beach parking. Now, the restaurant was never even open for lunch. It was all beach parking. What happens is lots of families get out of their car with coolers and carts with beach umbrellas and that sort of thing, and little kids, and they go from Sunset Boulevard, but because that is all contained by parking, they tend to walk through the intersection. And without that use, by changing to residential, we would no longer require that parking. We could defer any right to use it to the town, and they could easily put in an internal sidewalk there to keep people out of harm's way. Our plan would include restoration of the dune on that site. We would no longer need dumpsters causing early morning noise, smell, and attracting rodents and seagulls. There'd be no more food and alcohol deliveries, radically reduced car parking and traffic, significantly higher property taxes to the town. I would estimate a factor of 10 times property taxes. Additionally, there would be a significantly reduced cost burden to the town on services such as fire, police, health, and parking enforcement in the area. The new structures would follow current code and offer a vastly improved look appropriate for the island. With the permission of the board, I would like to now turn this back over to my team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So just a few of the current property attributes. It's an almost 12,000 square foot property. Approximately 71% of the property consists of impervious surfaces. That's pavement, buildings, structures, and the like. There's a pre-existing grandfathered use of the property, full-service restaurant with 125 seats and a full liquor license. The existing structures on the property are non-conforming with respect to front setback, side setback, FAR, and lot coverage. During flood stage, as Mark mentioned, water overflows into the intersection, creating an impediment to vehicular movement. The restaurant has utilized 32 parking spaces on and adjacent to the property, plus 40 plus on Sunset Drive. So we did submit an existing condition survey. It's in your package. We can turn back to this if you want, but just quickly, you also saw from the aerials, it's primarily a restaurant with a few additional structures behind it. There was a patio or a deck over here that was covered at one point in time for many years. Currently not the case. The proposal here, just getting to the bylaw requirements and the standards, is to change from a non-conforming use to a less detrimental non-conforming use. So going from a commercial restaurant to a multifamily use. Remove all of the structures and pavement from the property. Construct 4 units and 2 buildings. Elevated as required by the current building code. And on that, I'm just going to mention that the building code requirements for elevation over base flood elevation is going to be increased. The standard is being increased in July, and we're designing to meet the updated standard. And as part of this work, we're going to be restoring approximately 40% of the lot to sand and vegetation. Under the ordinance that we're proceeding with here, and this was after a determination as is required as part of your process from the building commissioner, zoning enforcement officer, we're requesting what they call a finding that you're very familiar with under section 97 4D4 of the PIOD provisions pertaining to commercial uses and structures. So if you've digested those provisions, as I'm sure you have, there's a section that relates to single and 2-family homes and converting and altering those. There's a separate section under 4D4 that relates to non-conforming uses and structures excluding single and 2-family structures. And that's what we're proceeding under. And within those provisions, it makes very clear that what it says is the following types of changes or alterations to non-conforming uses or structures may be authorized upon a finding by the Board of Appeals in the PIOD. And these include, under subsection B, a change of a pre-existing non-conforming use to another less detrimental non-conforming use. So that's the use part of it. I just wanted to highlight. The applicable legal standard here is for a finding defined in the bylaws as the question being whether or not the proposed use and structure is substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure or use to the neighborhood or the PIOD. So getting to the proposed conditions, this is the site plan that was submitted to the ZBA as part of your package. You've seen this. Within this site plan was a zoning table. This is a blown-up version of it, highlighted just to show the existing nonconformities in blue, which include the front setback. Just that front setback, that 3.2 feet is, you can see the shaded area of the existing building. That building was just off of the curved front setback there. Side setback at 8.5 feet. The maximum floor area ratio under existing conditions is 0.274. I did go back to some previous CBA filings back in 2017 where they were estimating 28%. So our numbers correlate with those. And the max lot coverage, existing conditions is 35. On the proposed conditions, you can see we are going to be increasing the floor area ratio. That's primarily because we're going from a single-story building to a 2-story building. With respect to the max lot coverage, which really only pertains to the buildings, it's similar, but unlike the buildings that are there now, these buildings are going to be elevated on piles, of course. I won't get into all of this, but you should just know that on the plans that we submitted to the Conservation Commission, we did provide details related to the specific sand that's going to be brought in, as well as a notation as to the plantings that will be required there. So those will be reviewed as part of the Conservation Commission process. This is on your site plan. It's just blown up here just to show The 100-year floor elevation here is at 13, flood elevation is at 13 feet. I think the new standard is that we have to go 2 feet above that, but I'll defer to Steve on that when he gets up here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve. And Steve, I'm going to just zoom into this site plan, but you don't need to control this if you want to stand up and just give us an overview of it.
Okay, Steve Sawyer with Millennium Engineering. As far as the site plan, I would say this environmentally, this is a home run, where most of the site right now, the majority is either building, pavement, or compacted gravel. So about 40% of the property now, as far as will be reverted back to, we'll rip up the pavement, building foundation, and gravel, and plant a minimum or backfill with a beach sand mix, along with American beach grass and miscellaneous native planting. So all the area you see in the green hatched area is going to be restored. Now also you see that large orange hatched area. That's the area that is now part of the easement or the right for parking for the restaurant use. So with this project, Mark he'll be giving up that right. So with that, there'll probably be the town could come in and put a sidewalk in for safety, pedestrian safety and such, and then a good portion of that area that is now pavement, they won't need that entire area for sidewalk. Probably, I would say 60% of that area hatched in orange will also be reverted back to natural beach vegetation and sand. So environmentally, this is a tremendous improvement to how it exists today. Also, the flooding that they experience on Sunset Boulevard, there's a low area with a catch basin. We'll be carving back the pavement to the gutter line there, so any runoff would run from the sheet flow from the building into the sand and back into the ground. So that would mitigate any ponding due to the lack of maintenance of that storm drain. So as far as the parking, the parking is under the building with four driveways for each building with two spaces under the building is proposed. And the utilities for this project will be serviced by the water and sewer for this site, and I believe that the betterments paid for this property supports the use, the 4-unit use here. And I think, Jeff, I think that covers.
Yeah, you want to just get to this?
So this, originally, we were designed to be 2 feet, actually we're 2.7 feet above, 2.7 feet above flood, which the current flood regulations, that is more than ample to cover it. But the new building code, actually Chris, the architect, and I, we reviewed that. The new building code now is going to require, even in an AE without any velocity zone, 2 feet clear from the flood to the underside of the steel lowest structural member. So with that, it's going to be, it'll push our first floor up slightly to meet that.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Welcome.
I did include a plan here that I want to highlight quickly. One of the potential project revisions that we would like to get your feedback on now or later, or even from the public that's here this evening, is whether we think we have with the right, you could authorize a slide of one of these buildings away from the other to increase the space between them. And we thought that might be something of interest because it might, one of the concerns that was expressed to us by the neighbors was sort of a massing impression. And we thought by splitting the two buildings further, that would partially address that. The trade-off is that you're then, instead of completely complying with the front setback, as the current plan does, you can see it here, is the setback line, that's the 20-foot setback, front setback. If we were to slide that building away from the other building. We didn't want to bring it closer to the neighbors, so we thought we would slide this one closer to the street. We're still, from a front setback perspective, better than what's there currently. It would allow increased space between the buildings, more light to get through. So we just throw that out there for
Yeah.
any reaction you might have.
And also, Jeff, what's that, there's a dimension, it's still a substantial distance from the edge of pavement. I can't quite read that from you.
Contribute to what was once over by the restaurant on the other side of the street. There used to be an old hotel there, and it was a nice big pink Victorian hotel. So we're kind of trying to bring back a little bit more of architecture, historic architecture into the island. With that said, I'll just go over it really quickly, and I know you're not really that enthralled about interior of the building, but basically it's 2 duplexes. First floor is just living space area, living room, dining room, kitchen, and office area. Second floor, 3 bedrooms, master suite, and then up on above on the top floor, there is a roof deck that is somewhat concealed. It's about 42-inch high roof line with an inset deck. So it's not visible by other people on the island, and it allows them to have use over the island. And so that's basically what it is. This is the same thing for the other unit, just one. The one that is closest to Plum Island Boulevard does have an extra turret on the side to give it a little bit more of a Victorian feel and design. This would be the view of the structure from Plum Island Boulevard, and that's pretty much the gist of it. Pretty plain and simple. I'm just kind of throwing around the design aspect of it. These guys are doing the heavy lifting tonight.
I do want to point out though, so you did notice that the top height of the building.
Contribute to what was once over by the restaurant on the other side of the street. There used to be an old hotel there, and it was a nice big pink Victorian hotel. So we're kind of trying to bring back a little bit more of architecture, historic architecture into the island. With that said, I'll just go over it really quickly, and I know you're not really that enthralled about interior of the building, but basically it's 2 duplexes. First floor is just living space area, living room, dining room, kitchen, and office area. Second floor, 3 bedrooms, master suite, and then up on above on the top floor, there is a roof deck that is somewhat concealed. It's about 42-inch high roof line with an inset deck. So it's not visible by other people on the island, and it allows them to have use over the island. And so that's basically what it is. This is the same thing for the other unit, just one. The one that is closest to Plum Island Boulevard does have an extra turret on the side to give it a little bit more of a Victorian feel and design. This would be the view of the structure from Plum Island Boulevard, and that's pretty much the gist of it. Pretty plain and simple. I'm just kind of throwing around the design aspect of it. These guys are doing the heavy lifting tonight.
I do want to point out though, so you did notice that the top height of the building is pretty close to the 35-foot limit. That 35-foot limit is, I think, right, Chris?
Yes.
Remind me, is a measurement off of these top structures, because that's how you do it, right? So it's the mean elevation of that top structure. You can see though, that's a small part of the roof feature. Most of the roof line is well below the 35 feet. I just wanted to
believe
point
it's
that
at
out.
about 30 or 33 feet is to the roof line where the roof deck is. So it's just the turrets and the head house up at the above to get up to the roof is maxed out at the 35 feet, which is only about 5 feet wide and probably about 15 feet long, running the length of the house. So it's not a large obstructive view, as minimal as possible to any of the abutters. There you can see it. Those are 2 head houses side by side, again to try and not obstruct any other views or make it more massive. So it was carefully designed so that we would have the minimalist impact for everyone around.
So I did want to, so these are renderings by Rob Liana. I don't know if you've seen his renderings before. We see him all the time in Newburyport, but he's a watercolor artist and he did these up for us. It's just a perspective you'll hear from, I think Jennifer, when she speaks tonight, that this is, I should just point out, it is from a sort of an elevated view, not a street view, so take it for what it's worth. It was just try to help you understand sort of what these buildings might look like in context, though.
With that said, just want to say one other thing is that, you know, during the neighborhood meeting, it was brought up that because the buildings are so close together, as you can see in this rendering, it does seem a little bit massive in the total overall scale of the project. So that's why the team came up with an alternate plan to try and widen that, so it wouldn't seem so like it's almost in one building. Because right now in that view, it's about 6 to 8 feet in between the buildings, and now we're spacing it out to about 15 feet, which makes it a lot more feel like individual buildings instead of something that's too close.
And then just quickly, Chris, before you sit down, so the other design change that we are contemplating, and we invite your input on it, are reflected here. And Chris, maybe you can just go through these quickly.
Sure. So right now, in the turrets that we have there, on the first, in the upper picture there, we have clear story windows in the turrets that really bring out more of a Victorian style and elevates the turrets, which is definitely another version of Victorian style. We also put a lot of corbels in the rooftop, underneath the rooftop there, to really bring out and put a lot of detail into it. So in order to lower the roof line just a bit, we decided to take out the clear story windows, lower the turrets, so now you have a consistent, uniform roof line all the way around the building, and the peaks of the turrets will not stick up even further than the roof deck itself. So it helps to bring down the size and scale of the project, and not be so obstructive at the high tops.
So you may care about that design element, you may not. So we just put it out here for whatever feedback you might have. And I will say, we understand you haven't seen this before tonight. Just so everyone here knows, we are going to be continuing this hearing after tonight. We've got planned changes that we're still tinkering with and looking for more feedback, so this discussion will continue. But these are just the comparison of a demonstration of the torrent changes that we're contemplating and inviting feedback on. And actually, these are rear elevations that we didn't have rear elevations submitted with the package that we sent you. These rear elevations are here. That's building 2, building 1. These are for the revised design with the lower turrets. But if we end up proceeding with the original design, we'll provide rear elevations of the buildings that we presented in the first application.
So when you lower the turrets, you leave the walkway on the roof the same height, that doesn't change that?
No, it does not
Correct.
change.
So it's still at the 35 feet?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've got a lot of details here about FAR and lot coverage and things like that I wasn't going to get into in my presentation. It's here if you want it. I can just quickly show you what's here, and it'll be up to the board to decide how detailed you want to get into it. But I was just pointing out through this 2024 aerial the different elements that were included in the FAR calculations, which, as I mentioned, are consistent with those that were provided in 2017, which was, I don't want to get into all that history unless you want to, but what had to happen there was these sheds here, as part of that 2017-2018 settlement, these 2 sheds were moved off of the property line into the spaces where they're shown here. And then these other features, the storage space with a cooler and these water refrigerators, those were units that were in place. They've been there in place for many years, even before the 2017 time period. But I mentioned the 2017 ZBA filing because in order to move those sheds and make some of the other changes that they were making as part of that settlement agreement, they had to come to the ZBA and get the ZBA to approve those changes, which the ZBA did. So it's just a little background. Happy to highlight it further if you want. And this, we can go to this if you want to get into the details, but this is the breakdown of the FAR numbers that were provided with the application, and I just highlighted the different components that were included in that calculation. Bylaw definitions, etc. So again, I'm not planning on getting into that any further unless you want to. I think with that, I'm just going to put the nice image up and turn it back to the board. Thank you.
All right, thank you. A lot of people in the audience, do you want to hear a little bit what they say, or? Is there, no, there'll be additional information provided if there's only a continuation, but we might as well hear what people in the audience have to say while we're here, because they came tonight. So, there are people in the audience that would like to speak in favor of the project? See anybody? Anyone? All right, people in the audience that would like to speak, you could just, anybody would like to speak, please raise your hand. I'll start with you,
Okay.
lady.
I just have a question.
Sure.
Janice Desmond, Brynmore Way, and I understood that when the water district came into effect, one standpipe was allowed per home, right? Is that correct? When there was a home, they only had one standpipe for the water and the storage, correct?
There's one sewer connection.
Right. So how can we put up 4 houses?
So commercial properties were assessed on their use, and they were assessed
This one was assessed 3 betterments,
3 betterments.
which, which they had to pay for to secure those.
Yep.
But what about the 4th?
Well, it's not one, in this setting, in the commercial setting, they weren't trying to tie it to a residential use, obviously, so it wasn't 1 betterment per residential unit in the commercial context. And just to take Blue, for example, I think Blue has 3 betterments, but they have, what, 14 units or something like that?
14 units, all with kitchens and bathrooms.
Right.
But not
So-
14 homes.
That's right, yeah.
Right, so, but I think, I mean, at least the perspective of the Newbury, of the sewer folks, the water and sewer folks in Newburyport, it's really, the question is, what are the flows been associated with the restaurant use? And what are the flows associated with the proposed 4-unit use? And are those lower? And the answer is yes. And we haven't gotten any written approvals or anything from them, but that's the analysis we're gonna have to do with them.
Oh, there are multiple 2-family homes that are assessed a betterment and a half. So it's not a 1-for-1.
So, as you're looking to assess that, I'd ask you to, well, I think we need to find out the excerpt of the DEP administrative consent order dated September 15th, 2000, which was the order that then set up what the PIOD was effectively written against. And it, on or before October 15, 2021, the city and the town shall take the following actions which are sufficient to ensure the distribution system, the WWTF system improvements do not encourage growth and development on Barrier Beach in accordance with Executive Order 181:1. Adopt a Plum Island Overlay District, PIOD. Adopt a Wetlands Protection Bylaw, ordinance, and accompanying regulations, and pre-file a special act of legislature. In addition to adopting the PIOD ordinance, bylaw, regulations, and special act of the legislature required above, the city and town shall not issue any building permits for the construction of any new structures or for the expansion of any existing structures unless the owner has applied for and obtained all applicable permits and approvals, including without limitations, final orders under the Wetlands Protection Act, and unless the entire structure being constructed or expanded complies with all applicable state, federal, local building codes, regulations, and requirements. B, at a minimum, the PIOD shall include and/or codify the following restrictions. On vacant lots that exist as of the effective date of the PIOD, the only use structure that will be permitted as of right will be a single-family home not to exceed 2 stories or a medium height of 35 feet, whichever is lower. 2, for all existing structures as of effect of the date of the PIOD, conversions into 2-family homes will be prohibited. Pre-existing non-conforming uses structures other than single-family and 2-family structures will be tolerated as long as they exist as of the effect of the date of the PIOD. Any substantial extension of such uses/structures shall not be allowed as of right. And pre-existing non-conforming single-family, 2-family structures may be altered only where the alteration will not cause substantial detriment to the neighborhood. However, no additional bedrooms will be allowed. No exceedance of the median roof height of 35 feet will be allowed. No structures may be more than 2 stories in height, and no structures may go beyond the footprint of the existing house but may cantilever if unable to cantilever, they may exceed the footprint but not impede the sideline setback of 10 feet. So some clarification on this is going to be needed. My understanding has always been that the consent order that was issued to create the PIOD is still in effect and can still carry fines for somebody that doesn't follow it. So,
So what you're saying is because it was a commercial, now it's gonna be a residential.
I will answer your question in
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah,
So if you could just hold for a second.
Okay.
We'll hear other people and we'll, next person who would like to speak. Yes, the lady.
Donna Finnegan, 6 Bryn Mawr Way. I would just like the board to think about their ride onto Plum Island and picture that structure, the size, the inappropriateness as far as the homes and people that live in that area. And I would like you to think about the flavor of the island and see if that is a fit. I also question the location as being appropriate traffic-wise, foot and automobile. It's always busy in that area, and at certain times of the day, more so than other times of the day, and it's always busy seasonally and holiday. And we're asking to put more stress on that area. The people that live there will have vehicles, they will have guests. That will put stress on the walking area, the walking ability in that area for a size of building as you're asking. I have other objections, but primarily I would like you to look at it and see if you think that really is appropriate on Plum Island.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Jennifer Blanchet, 4 Island Lane. I thank the team for holding the neighborhood meeting. It was really nice to have the opportunity to look at it, digest it ahead of time. This is a big change. Some of the things are really positive. I mean, I have to say, Mark, we loved the grill. We loved you as a neighbor. We also, my husband's here as well, for 25 years, we have loved the light and air and the sunsets that we see. And no matter what goes there, it will change and we will lose those. That's not really why I stand here, but that is true. I stand here because I am concerned about what was presented at that meeting. And I am presenting, I'm talking to you, but I am presenting here to the owner, because what was presented and what you see up there, and to Donna's point, it's a mass, it's a huge mass. And I think the design team acknowledges it to some extent by the gesture of pulling them apart. You know, when you look at the back and you look at it on the oblique, it appears even longer than it, than it does here. We are a community of cottages. Yes, the size of the cottages has grown. This took its cues from a commercial building. It took its cues from a hotel. The hotel is not there. Plum Island Overlay District retreated. It said it's single-family homes that are appropriate. You just referenced them in the administrative consent order. I know these are 2-family homes, but there are 2 of them. They're at a density that creates an FAR that's over double what's allowable in this zoning district. I don't know how we ignore that. I actually don't have as strong an objection to the number of units, but that FAR, double, I question that. And I think the board really needs to question the FAR. I really appreciate the efforts to bring the scale of it down by reducing some of the turrets. You know, maybe there's an opportunity for a moment on the end. I wasn't even, thinking you'd get rid of all of them. But I do appreciate it. I think it was busy and out of the scale of the cottage community that exists. I think the other hearing had a lot to say about what was happening with the dune and everything else. This is a huge improvement on the ground. I just think the board really needs to look hard at, is it actually not substantially more detrimental with the scale of the building that's being proposed above that footprint? So I guess with that, if you're interested in entertaining some of the changes they're making, I would encourage you to do that. I think they're moving in the right direction. They're going to continue, so they have the opportunity to tweak them a little bit more, hopefully addressing the concerns of the neighborhood. I think that the town should consider what happens in this decision with that residual space in the short term. Until the town has money to do something, maybe there's an arrangement that could be made with the property owner to keep it safe so that cars are not driving through what will be residual and sort of no man's land. If there is any opportunity to put a sidewalk in, it is an unsafe corner. I do think that moving and having singular driveways will be better than just an open parking lot. Those are positives, but we can't get lost in the positives and forget to look at the things that might not be so positive. Thank you for your time and consideration, and please do the right thing for all of us.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm going to stay seated if I may. Ellen Daly on 6 Olga Way. I have kind of 3 main points, and again, just for consideration at this point. While we live in an area that is zoned for both commercial and residential, to everyone's point that's spoken so far, it's mostly a residential neighborhood. I have a little bit of issue with the term the gateway to the island, and I had an issue when the bar that was put in used that same terminology. It's not an island that's a tourist spot in the way that, you know, some famous places are, and it's not a gateway in my mind. It's the entrance to my neighborhood. And in my neighborhood, it's mostly cottages and houses, and we have very strict zoning, as you just read through. Thank you for that. Most of us have to have 1 or 2 bedrooms. Most of us don't have an office on top of the 2 bedrooms. I myself have just finished doing some work, and I had to keep to my footprint. I had to keep to my an amount of space. So I don't think that, from what I've spoken to people about, there's no real big issue with someone wanting to build residential over commercial. All of the positive reasons for that, I think, are kind of no-brainers, but I think it's the status and the state and the size of this residential, and that it does not adhere to the way that the rest of us are living around in that area. And I would argue that as a gateway, I then worry about, so when someone first comes onto the island, and we do have a lot of summer visitors that come on, what they're seeing as the very first image of Plum Island is a huge condo and then a bar. That is not what Plum Island is all about. We are a residential place for the most part that happens to have a beach and a few commercial zoned areas and a few restaurants. I don't have an issue with condos. I don't think most people will or do, but I would love to see a condo built to the scale of what all of the rest of us are living under and around. So condos, maybe that stick to the rules and the sizes of what would go onto that property if we weren't asking for it to go outside of all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience?
Yes, I'd like to speak, please. First of all, thank you for your service.
Name and address.
My name is Gary Macheros, and I own the greenhouse next to there. You know, history's been brought up in this conversation, so I'd like to talk a little about history. I moved to Plum Island when I was 12 years old, and I moved to what was formerly Angie Service, which my family owned for 40 years. And I remember when that corner was Four Seas Restaurant. I don't know if anyone remembers that.
Yes.
You remember the Four Seas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Before that, it was Thunderhead.
Well, what was great about the Four Seas was that It was a sub shop. And it was an ice cream place. So when someone came to the restaurant, they'd get a sub and they'd leave. Now, when we look at seating, there was probably 10 seats. Would you agree, everybody?
Maybe.
Maybe. And the Crapos owned it, and it was a seasonal thing, and it wasn't a big deal, right? So now time marches on. And we get a restaurant that is, which was the previous restaurant, which became, in my opinion, which I never voiced this, a horrible nuisance to me. I can tell you that the parking was horrendous, the noise. I had to cone off my property so that the cars would not park there. And it became a fire hazard because if a fire department had to come and get to my property, they couldn't. So for years and years and years, I've watched this, I've kept my mouth quiet, but now I'm 65 years old. My mother lives in the house and she's 85. And we're looking down at a piece of property that is gross. It was always gross. When you look at behind the property, the filth, it was horrible. It was gross. That property was never well taken care of. And in my opinion, and this is my opinion, things were done on that property that were not appropriate with proper permits or zoning or doing things that were correct. But I always kept my mouth shut. I left it alone. Now I'm looking at this, and it was commented, well, it looks like the old hotel. Well, let me tell you, I got a picture of the old hotel. And when I was a kid, I used to dig up the foundation of the old hotel behind the house. That looks nothing like the old hotel. You want to see a picture of the old hotel? Come to my shop, Angie Service, come in the office, and I'll show you a picture of the old hotel. It was gorgeous. That's not the old hotel. So, my point is that the property now is moving forward, and we're not dealing with a restaurant. We're not dealing with all the parking issues that we had to deal with, all the aggravation to the neighborhood of that. Now, yeah, people like to go there and have a drink. That lady liked it. That was great. God bless you. But it wasn't what I think it should have been at Plum Island Place. So the question I have is, if this property is no longer commercial, do the regulations revert it back to residential? That's my question to the board.
So, thank you. I will get into, I think I'll answer your question. Do you have anything else to say, or?
No, I'm just gonna look for like, is it a yes or a no? And if it's a yes, then it goes back to residential. I'm sorry to do that to you, sir, I don't mean to be disrespectful.
No, it's just that.
Then my point is that I want to keep it residential. If it's not gonna be commercial, I want it residential. That would be selfishly what I would like. And I want to thank you for all your time and your service. Sorry I get a little bit worked up.
Thanks. All right, so.
Thank you.
Your question, and the lady, yes, you had a question, and so it seems like we don't get the easy projects anymore, that everything that we get is a little bit more complicated and a little bit more complicated, and so this one is fairly complicated, and it will take some time to sort out, as did your gas station, our service station across the street, which then became the Sunset Club. So here we do have a pre-existing non-conforming use and structure, and the use and the structure are separate. So like Mr. Ward's home on 80 Northern Boulevard, where he built the garage, which was over the property line and was not permitted correctly, because it sat there and nobody challenged it for a period of 10 years, the structure became allowable, let's say. And so in past discussions, we could not ask them by right to remove the structure of the garage because it became existing. But the use is something that became pre-existing non-conforming at the time of the zoning bylaws were enacted. And from that point forward, so that's something we have to, that's the whole issue before us, is understanding what and defining and making sure we understand what was lawfully pre-existing and non-conforming in terms of the use when the original the original town bylaws, and then as that progressed, when the PIOD was added, what changes after that, and that they were all appropriately permitted. Then I think there'll be some questions about abandonment of one use to another use, and then there'll be some questions on just, understanding what uses or the opinions of what uses are less detrimental. And I think there'll be some pretty big discussion. If you had a restaurant and you wanted to change it to a drive-through takeout but still keep it a restaurant, there's some consistency of use, but a change of use. And this is from one use to a totally different use. It does say that the non-conforming structures will not follow the provisions of the PIOD, shall not apply to pre-existing non-conforming structures and uses when lawfully in existence at the date. But when you change the use and you go back to residential, it would seem there needs to be quite a bit of an argument that if you're going back to residential, why aren't you following the base zoning or the PIOD, which governs residential? And also, there'll be discussion on the consent order and the effectiveness that it's still active, and what powers that has and what powers that has as it was translated into our own PIOD. So,
Hello?
So with that, there's quite a few things to work through. But the first is following the use and following the additions to the structure. Once we find that out or figure out where we stand with that, then we can use that in understanding what the change is and whether it's deemed more or less detrimental. Does that make sense to you?
It does, but I'm a little curious as to why, is there any question about whether this has been used continuously enough to be a valid, lawfully non-conforming restaurant? Like, is that being questioned? I guess that's my question.
Yes, we wanted to understand from the time that zoning enacted what was there and how, because if you're going to claim size, if you're going to claim density, if you're going to claim improvements against what's there, then what there has to be justified before you can make that claim.
I totally agree with that. So what I'm trying to avoid is going back to 1967 or whatever, right? So we've got it in 2015, 2016 time period, the town took very aggressive enforcement actions against the property owner and the operator here, raising all kinds of issues about the legality of structures and what's going on that property. That was in two different courts. The enforcement action brought into district court by the town. My client brought sort of selective excessive enforcement action and adverse possession claims against the town's Superior Court. 2 years of trying to resolve that. As part of that litigation, the history that you're talking about was compiled by Mark's previous attorney. The argument being, these structures have been here at that time, 2016 or 2017. These structures have been here for more than 10 years. The use has been continuous. There was a dispute. It was resolved in 2018 by way of a settlement agreement where the town agreed that if Mark did certain things at the property, then the town would release him from all these claims of previous violations, unlawful structures and the like. So I think the starting point for this analysis you're asking about really should start at 2018, given that these issues were raised and they were resolved. Now, if after that settlement, there was let's say a 4-year period where the restaurant wasn't operating, then there might be an abandonment issue. And I know that these came up in connection with the Sunset Grill. You know, you wanted to make sure that the gas station was actually being operated and used. If you're taking the benefit of a non-conforming use, if it had lapsed at some point along the way, then maybe you couldn't make that argument. We don't have that situation here. I mean, we started 2018. I don't think that anyone can dispute it because that was in court and resolved. And you've got the documents on that because I sent them in last week. Since 2018, I'm happy to go through it, but we've got liquor licenses, we've got other records that will demonstrate that there was not a 2-year period, and there wasn't a lapse period. And so I guess the question is, will focusing on that time period solve the question? And I think it does, and maybe that's a question that you can ask of Lisa Mead.
It doesn't.
Why not?
It's made for structure, as I stated, with the 10-year rule, if someone doesn't catch you on it. But for use, if the use is changed, not continued, or was not approved for expansion at any point along the way, it is illegal. So
if it was discontinued, if it was abandoned, I agree. If it was abandoned.
If it was abandoned, yes.
Okay.
And if it was changed or altered or increased or whatever, and it wasn't properly permitted, then it's illegal.
All right, let's just take an example. Let's say it was a 50-seat restaurant and it was expanded to 200 feet without getting the permits. I think the restaurant use in that hypothetical would continue to be lawful, but your argument would be, yeah, but not the 150 increase, right? So you only get credit for having a restaurant there at 50 seats because the 150 increase was never approved. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay, so we can look at that. I don't think that that's gonna be a real point of relevance because I don't think we're arguing, our position doesn't have to rest on this restaurant being at its maximum capacity over the last 10 years or whatever. I mean, it's been a restaurant since like 1950. That's why I'm getting a little agitated, because there's no doubt that the restaurant use was lawful.
That's the starting point.
But maybe not the size, okay.
Where we stand.
Yeah.
And then if it was abandoned, it would revert back to base zoning or TIOD, and it would be single-family residential, in which this case you would get an accessory dwelling unit by the state law that just changed as opposed to where we were with accessory apartments and not allowing them on Plum Island last year.
Right. So we'll do what we have to do to confirm the point that the restaurant use is a lawful pre-existing use.
Okay, that sets the
Okay.
basis
Yep.
for the discussion, and then I think, as I said, we'll go back to the consent order from the DEP, and then we'll also understand, which to me is a real question, the understanding that if you're changing it to what you feel is a less detrimental use, we're weighing that against a neighborhood of residential. So, I'll tell them I'm talking. Do you guys have any questions, comments, either for me or for?
One of the issues that was brought up is the FAR. You guys are actually looking at a 59% from 25. I mean, it's over double the FAR.
Yeah, and I mean, but I
Let's
get
just start
that,
there.
but that is because we're going from a restaurant, single story to.
But it doesn't change the
stories.
FAR.
No.
It doesn't change the FAR, because our FAR is 25?
FAR is 25, lot coverage is 20.
Yeah. And so you're literally 134% increase over what it is, and it's 150% over what our proposed is. So saying it's less detrimental is kind of a stretch. When you look at increasing, double the increase in FAR.
What are the impacts associated with FAR that's of concern?
Intensity,
Intensity of what, traffic?
intensity of the building.
Massing.
Space.
The massing, yeah?
And I note that in Peter's denial letter, he didn't just deny it on 97-4D4. He also denied it based on both FAR and lot coverage. So he kind of, Mario and him are on the same page. He specifically spelled out floor area ratio and lot coverage. And I didn't think you.
Yeah, I think that was because we're going from a non-conforming structure to another non-conforming structure, and he wanted to point out that what we're proposing, yes, it is non-conforming. We totally concede that, it is non-conforming. We give the authority, your point is well taken.
We like to abide by the
Yeah,
POD.
ultimately.
That, so our authority goes by the POD, which is 25%.
But you have the authority through a finding, if, like, I heard, I'm not arguing with you on your FAR point, but you do have the authority to allow an increase in FAR above the standard. I don't think we're stuck with.
Right, but not double.
Because in your view, that's too much of a detriment,
Yeah.
so therefore you won't make the finding. I get it, that's fine. That's part of the evaluation that you have to go through, and I'm hearing you.
And then it becomes, it becomes a standard then. Somebody else comes and says, well, I have
That's right.
25.
That's
Oh, we
right.
gave them, we doubled theirs, why can't I double mine? We set precedents.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, the detriment analysis here, though, is different than a homeowner coming in and wanting to double the size of their house, because the detriment, that the calculus that you're comparing, the question is the new project, the new use and the new structure substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood and the PIOD than what's there now?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the question. And I hear what you're saying is, if
You're
it's
doubling
big,
the space.
if you're doubling the space, that's
How can
a
it not be
substantially more detriment.
Yeah.
But I don't think that analysis, I do think the analysis should take into account other impacts, traffic, huge improvement, flooding, huge improvement.
How do you know someone else
Resources,
doesn't buy the
huge
property and develop something a lot less? Or build something a lot smaller? You can still do the flood, you can still do those improvements, but it doesn't have to be double the FAR.
That's right.
I mean, I get it.
We're not solving everything.
Yeah, I know.
We're sort of.
Well, we do want to get your feedback though. I mean, so I haven't heard from, I mean, in terms of the buildings we're proposing, I'm hearing one member doesn't like them, too big. I mean, so we want your feedback. And I mean, if others of you feel the same way, we want to know that.
I agree with Mario. It's,
Yeah.
it's really the massing of it that is more detrimental. Yes, is it newer, and it's not our purview to comment on style, even though for me, it doesn't fit in the neighborhood.
That's right.
But that's not really in our purview to discuss. But the massing is, and whether it's more detrimental. And although, I appreciate the increase in green space, and I definitely worry about this corner that's going to be left as, back to the city, which sounds nice that, oh, you're giving it back to the city, but the reality is it's gonna sit there, and what's gonna happen to it? And I know that's not necessarily your job to solve, because it's not your property, but I think it will definitely be an eyesore on your prominent corner as you come across, Plum Island Bridge. So I do worry about that, and maybe there is a collaboration with the city. Again, I don't know what that looks like, but I think it's a concern. I know we talked about parking on our last project that we had tonight, but, so it sounds like we're parking underneath the townhouses, but then there's also a driveway too, so are we parking 4 cars in each townhouse? Because the unit 4 could probably fit 2 under, and then 2 out in the driveway. So again, a lot of parking. I understand there's been a lot of parking now, and it's quite awful, to be honest, in my opinion.
That was why we didn't feel the parking, we felt like with respect to parking, it was a huge improvement over existing.
It
And you're
is,
saying it
but-
could be better.
It could be, and you're sort of, you know, suggesting you're making this better, this site. But I'm not sure in how many ways that's really happening. Beyond at the ground plane, I think, you know, definitely an improvement that it's not as, there's more pervious surfaces. Yeah, that massing, it's tough. It's, you know, it's tough. It's like Mario said, so far over the FAR. It's hard to get there.
I'm on board with everyone else. I agree with the massiveness. I think that one of the audience members said Plum Island is an island of capes, not duplexes, or something to that effect. We haven't approved a lot of duplexes, cottages instead of duplex. So I also think we should follow the chairman's suggestion, get the use thing sorted, and then we can deal with the duplex issue, and then the other things might fall in line by themselves.
Larry, any great words of wisdom like you always do for us?
No.
Yes. Well, I think, yes, you had.
Yes. It was just something that I read and I thought of again when, Gary, is that?
Yes.
You referred to, you know, would like to see it back as a residential area? Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Yes. There was a fact that I read that if it were to go back, there would be an allowance for a grandfathering in of a 5,000 square foot building, including an apartment that could go in there rather than something like this.
So let's just say the use was abandoned for 2 years, more than 2 years. And the zoning says that property that has been abandoned, a use that's been abandoned, would reverse back to the base zoning. So at that point, it would become a residential lot. I think that then you would argue that there's an existing structure on the lot and that we would apply the PIOD because it's now residential to the size of that. And the state has just passed legislature that allows the use of adding a detached accessory apartment by right. The town's working through that zoning. It will come up probably in the next town meeting to be modified. But previously, and that goes against the consent order that I read, and so there's still a little confusion in trying to how to figure that out. But there's been some meetings with town planner and town council and also the Merrimack Valley Planning Association to try to figure out what we do so that we can have the proper guidance in order to do that. Did I answer your question?
Sure. I just read that.
Yeah. So with that, you need to review what we said.
No, I think I got it.
Okay. I guess for me, I have a little bit of a struggle when I try to go in a circle and you're proposing a use of residential, but it's a much increased use of residential versus what the neighborhood has. And I'm trying to think through that some more.
Is that on the basis of like the number of units or the size of, is it a massing issue or is it the configuration of units?
I think it's the number of units.
Right. I mean, we can see, I mean, obviously multifamily it's not an allowed use.
Right.
We said that right up front in our application. The reason we're looking for a finding is because of that. If we didn't, we wouldn't be here if we were proposing a single family. I think I don't even think we need a finding for that. Maybe we do, but yeah, the reason we're looking for a finding is to go from one non-conforming use to another. Peter looked at that. You've got the authority as long as they're pre-existing. I mean, I get your issues.
If you did a single story, but Peter would probably still just say upward extension and you'd be back here anyway for a single family residence.
For sure. Yeah. All right, probably right, yeah. Even for a single family?
even for a single family. Because he looks at it and you, just because of the history and stuff, and we do get upward extension, even though it's kind of minor, he still flags that 90% of the time.
Right.
Okay.
Just say one real quick thing. I definitely respect and appreciate all the comments that are made. And I appreciate how everybody loves the nostalgia of Plum Island. But as you can see through time, it's evolving. And now with the new regulations and stipulations that we have out there and the restrictions that we have, everything has to go up on pilings. And with that, the houses are changing slowly. And much to my chagrin, because I do like the capes and the cottages and all that, but the island is changing, unfortunately, for many of us who do adore the small buildings and cottages. So when you go drive down on many of these roads that you see on the island now, there are more buildings, more houses going up and losing the old cape and small homes that you see there. This is becoming the new norm. And it's unfortunate for some of us who really love that old aspect of Plum Island, but it is changing, and it's something that unfortunately we're gonna have to start to accept. And as much as you don't like it, but it is changing, and this is going with the change, in my opinion.
Well, I think that's an important point. I mean, I think if we did a single family here, that also would have to be raised to the same point that we're talking about. The elevation above that 100-year flood line that we showed, that's mandatory. I don't think we have any discretion on that. That's a building code requirement. So even if we were to do a single-story cape, it's gonna start at 13 feet or whatever, right? So I just wanna make sure that the residents understand that that's not a decision that we're making. That's something that we'd be required to do.
I know, and there is thought, and we just heard on the last argument, that parking underneath the raised structure is detrimental to the whole Barrier Island beach, so that's not a good thing.
That's a very different context. That property and this property, I'm having the same discussion with the commission, you know that, but this is not a primary frontal dune in the velocity zone with beautiful natural coastal dunes.
Comes up that way.
Tongue in cheek a little bit, but we see this on everything that comes before us.
Okay.
And sometimes, in terms of parking under being a little bit higher, it is a betterment to get the cars underneath the homes. Other times, it seems excessive where, in order to meet the flood maps, that they don't need to be at 13 feet, they could be at 6 feet.
Yeah, I totally get that. And at the Ward property, the 100-year flood line is actually below the ground level. So in our case, it's what, at 13 feet, right? So our requirement is to go 2 feet above that at the lowest point of the structure. At the Ward's house, I know this is not before you now, but just to contrast in terms of the precedent issue, when you're on a primary frontal dune, that base flood elevation is below the dune, it's below the sand. So they aren't required by building code to do that. It makes sense to raise it to protect your home. That's not why we're proposing it this way. We're proposing it this way because we don't have any choice on this property but to start at that elevation. So even if you build a cape at that height, it's not gonna look like the ones that people would wish that we could build here, so.
Understood.
Yeah.
I just have one other question for the architect.
Yes, sir.
The two units, the sides of the units that face each other have windows on them. Do you have a fire separation?
Yeah, it's 10 feet, there's a 10-foot fire separation, or 6 feet fire separation, but you can do it with fireproof materials on the side of the building. I've done it on Salisbury Beach, they were 3 feet apart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just check.
Absolutely, no, I appreciate it.
Thinking at first I didn't see any windows on the side, and I seemed a little curious that you would propose that without any windows.
I know, I personally, I don't want to shake hands with my neighbor through a window, but all means on this, you know, it is legal, it is legit, it is possible, and with the right proper materials, it is permitted.
Okay.
And that would be obviously approved and verified with the building inspector before we would ever get a permit on the building. Yes.
So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to continue.
Yeah.
And that would be the 15th or the 22nd, and I don't because May 1st falls on a Thursday, I don't know if anybody has any.
I'm not available the 22nd, I'm on vacation.
Well,
Doesn't
you're not
matter.
here, what the hell?
Does
You're
not
good.
matter.
It does matter.
Nope,
You're our-
proceed.
you're our everything.
Nope.
All right.
May 15th.
May 15th.
Yeah, 15th.
May 15th?
Yeah. 15th.
Yep, I'm looking for it now.
All right, so I'll make a motion. I'll make the motion to continue the meeting, get additional information on the use and counsel with, consult with town council and all the commissioners on May 15th, 7:30 here.
All right. Is there a second?
A second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Just stop. The June meeting falls on June 19th. All day for the town. And I have a wedding that weekend. So I thought you could have a meeting on the 18th, or you could have a meeting on the week after, but I'm on vacation that week too. You just have a day by next month.
So let's just,
Maybe the 18th?
could you?
Yeah.
Oh, you want to go out?
It's the legal ad, I have to, yeah, it's not a big deal, but.
Again, depends on what it is. The 18th is Wednesday.
Yes, the 19th holiday. Yes.
Somebody else has it.
Well, I was gonna say.
Okay, cool.
We're all good.
Yes.
I can see you the next time we take another day off.
Yeah, I should have.
People that come in and the shop and you talk.
Exactly. No problem. I apologize. It looked like I was looking at you. You're getting mad. I wasn't. I was getting frustrated. My neighbor said that we get there, she can handle it.
No problem.
I appreciate it. No, they would have shut down, but anyway, no worries.
I also couldn't talk so long to do the recording.
True.
We used to have a microphone where that.
I said, okay, whatever you want, you're the boss.
Everybody wants to be here at all.
Yeah, it's like a social, but I do too,
On the tape,
it's,
we're
gets it out.
recording our voices because their voices, we're cutting it out. That's why they don't mumbling stuff anyway.
You mentioned the EDU and allowance for the EDU on property. Yeah, I drove putting on. Conversation I have. No, not yet. That's wrong. Said that the administrator can send an insurance account still in so that would mean the primary unit could only have, and the accessory unit could only have.
How do you like all the dashboard stuff?
I'm just.
For anybody else's property that has residential, wanted to do residential and had an ADU, yes.
I would use the parking thing, all right, this would still be evaluated under the not-for-profit rental potential. I know that.
It's a different animal.
Okay, so you're sort of considered, you for any other property. That is your understanding. At present, and I know it's moving target.
Yeah.
We're all getting older.
It hurts a little more on.
I know. Next week we can make some.
All the dry hand.
That's right, my ear
It's
is
allowable everywhere else in town, I'm sure someone's gonna argue and take it to the state.
Well,
Probably.
what I have heard so far from the in my other capacity, is that the administrative consent order and the vetting account would still hold. However, this property is zoned, so I respect the fact that it might be different. I was more just.
You have your house,
I guess every
Now you
morning you
want
get
a
up and
lot
say, I'm on an island, raise the
20%,
flags.
and you're gonna put an ADU on
Only
top.
show in town.
Well, your house is gonna be smaller.
Yeah,
Did you
absolutely.
Right.
You gotta carve it out of what you have.
We'll see when someone tries to step up and do it. This is like totally different.
I recognize that, I just was responding to where you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
To just ask.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Last but not least,
Yeah, fire away.
Gerald Venditti, 11 and 15 Sunset Drive. The applicant is requesting a variance reversal of administrative decision and special permit finding for relief from Newbury zoning bylaws, section 97.4D2B and 97.6B, regarding allowed use and dimensional requirements in order to correct lot configuration, allowing for the creation of a legal non-conforming lot to be redeveloped in order to raise the pre-existing non-conforming dwelling and for the construction of a new single-family dwelling with garage on pilings on the property located at 11 and 15 Sunset Drive, Plum Island, Newbury, Mass. 01951. Accessories plat U02, lot 78 and 80. This hearing on variance requested was closed. Tonight is a review of the draft variance for both lots. Applicants to submit an A&R plan to planning board for endorsement approval before coming back to CPA for special permit request.
All right. Larry, do you guys read, do you guys announce that you're reading a draft decision? Do you read in the actual applicant on the night you're reviewing a draft decision, or do you just say we're reading a draft decision?
Usually.
The public meeting was closed,
Yeah,
so there is no public meeting to announce.
right.
I'm just curious of the formality.
Yeah, it depends on the decision. You know, sometimes with the planning director would just summarize it. Sometimes would you just, you know, go through very briefly, like the history of the project, and then if there are any special conditions, would read those out, you know, to the public. So it really depends on the level of complication, you know, or the level of information.
Thanks. I can see that. We could have just listed the address and then a decision review, or we could list the address, a couple key points to be read, to summarize. So let's.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. You mean
I
we
did
put it
too.
in the agenda?
Yeah.
Oh, no, in the agenda would simply just put the project.
Name,
description.
address, and
Yeah.
just say decision review.
Yeah, I thought you meant during the meeting itself.
No.
No.
So we're at a decision, and I think we've listed it sometimes, and other times it's just been the address. Okay,
Officially,
so, let's
Well, as
take,
long as the public knows what's under discussion, right, the topic under discussion.
I guess in my view, if we had taken it first, and all these people are here, then I'd ask you to read the whole thing. If there's nobody here, you just read the address. and take it.
sounds good, yep.
Okay, let's get going here. What were you saying before about these decisions? Were you saying anything? Is there anything?
Well, the only comment we had was that it would have been helpful to have this letter dated August 28th. And I feel somewhat responsible for this because I was presenting an opposing viewpoint and I should have done a better job. I think I could have done a better job had I had some of the material in this. Nevertheless, we voted. Let's move on. Is that a fair? I mean, I don't know how we can go back in time. I don't know why we didn't get it until, but we got it when we got it.
Are we able to be CC'd on the stuff that, questions that Lisa gets from, like you or anyone else?
So if I seek town council's, this is how I understand it, maybe it's very wrong, but if I seek Lisa's advice and I'm having a conversation with Lisa, then that's between Lisa and I. If I ask Lisa a question for the board and she writes a memorandum on my request, then it becomes, and I want it to be part of the record, then it becomes part of the record and it gets distributed.
Okay.
Right, and in this case, it was a letter from Lisa to the building inspector, which seems like it should have been part of the record.
I thought that was something.
Pardon me?
I didn't see it.
We didn't get it until a couple of days ago.
It was just distributed. Oh, you're talking about the one from last year?
Yeah, it says
You
August
guys were sent
28th.
that letter. That was emailed out to everyone.
Oh, I did just get it last week. I didn't get it.
got it last.
I just resent it last week to make sure you had it, that's all.
So, okay, so let's, just make sure that it's super clear.
Door is closed.
You got a memo on 2 Plum Island Boulevard that was sent to you from town council?
Yes.
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 Okay. So, that was, that's because a lot of other people, like Concom, like the planning board, like other people were asking Lisa, other people were having questions. Lisa then put that memo together. I was on a phone call with Lisa and town planner and for an overview, and then Lisa said, okay, here's my understanding, here's the memo. That memo was the driver for saying we gotta get to the use. And the use, if the use wasn't continued appropriately anywhere point along the way, it's illegal. The building and the structure, and so she outlines it in the memo. That's where my comments were coming from, but she got that. So,
Are you talking about the same one? It sounds like you're talking about the,
You're talking about 11:15,
Yeah.
right? He's talking about-
no, I know, I'm just saying.
it's a similar
Using it as
thing.
an example.
Yeah, I did see the part about the houses and being demolished and all that.
So, I guess I'll just make sure that if there was a memo in it, and the memo actually went to the building inspector, because the building inspector was saying, I don't know if I can answer this question, and that's where that, for this 11:15 was generated.
Okay.
And I thought I referred to that memo in the meeting, and obviously if I pull out a memo and I start talking to the memo, then the memo is public record, right? If I have the memo and I keep it here, but I use some of the memo to talk, it's not public record.
Yeah.
And I think we also went through a bit of discussion that said, if I'm taking notes here and I'm at home taking notes, these are my notes and these are not public record. Chrissy's notes that she's taking for meeting minutes and as part of the record are public record and can be requested, but somebody can't request my personal notebook. You ever had that happen to you guys?
Yeah, no, I think it's accurate what you said.
But I spoke to Lisa on this issue, and she said the same thing. If I'm speaking to her, then it's confidential between her and I, but if she puts it in a memo like this, addressed to a town employee, then it's a public record.
Yep.
So I think we're all in the same.
So do I add the memo from Lisa to Peter on the submitted materials? It was just an email to him, not to the board. But it was about the project. Do you want that memo added?
Yeah, because I think that memo was distributed to everyone. It was given to Peter, and I think Peter turned around and handed it back to Vendetti.
And that was my argument. That's what I brought up. I felt that Vendetti had it, and I didn't have it, because I didn't get it until last week.
Okay.
And same with Mario.
Okay, so that's a big oversight. We need to figure out how to do better on that.
Well, it's no hard feelings.
Okay.
Talk good.
All right, let's keep this moving here. So, we've got 2, 15, and 11. Let's just go with 11 first.
Chrissy, are they identical except for the
Yes.
heading? Okay. So
Tried to do one for both lots, but I was told I couldn't.
So we only have to read one technically,
Yes.
except for the titles?
Yeah. Actually, no, the special, Eric's summation of how to grant the variance and move forward was different for each lot. So under, page, you'll have to read page 4.
Specific findings.
Yep.
So I guess I have one question. The exhibit, map of the revised lot lines, dated October 5th. That wouldn't be the correct one,
That
yeah.
was my comment too.
That would be the correct date.
That would be an older one, yeah.
Yeah.
Even though did he in fact update the date? I don't know, I don't have it in front of me, but
believe
sometimes
it
the
or not-
date isn't updated.
I do have it in front of me because you changed me the last time.
And I didn't bring it this time. But yeah, I had that same comment.
So here's October 5th. That's the original one, existing site. See if you can find a new one.
Just in case you guys decide to sign tonight, those are fresh signature pages.
No, I don't think we have, remember he emailed us something, or it was on a 8x11 or something like that?
You couldn't see it very well.
I couldn't see it very well.
The lot line adjustment plan?
Yeah.
I asked him for that, another copy of that. I guess he's still in Florida, he sent it to us next week.
We gotta kind of reference the right one, or we just approved the wrong, yeah, that one.
Yeah, here, I have in the email, but I can't read the date.
Right, and Eric has a printed copy of it, so is there a date on that, Eric?
Can't read it.
1972. No.
It's the same as the other ones, October 5th. But when he sends me a good plan next week, I'll be able to incorporate the right date if it's different.
All right, so let's just cross out October 5th. And date received. So you're gonna get an updated plan that has his date on it, that's basically this. Right? And whatever date it is, and you receive it, and you can stamp received.
Okay.
And make sure it's the same.
I was just gonna say, I was like, hopefully it's the same one.
And if it's, it should be drafted, by Everett, but for some reason, if it's handwritten like this, then I would call and ask him to send you an updated plan that's actually drafted by the engineer.
Okay.
And dated appropriately for the record, so that he doesn't have any issues, put it that way. And then you can keep that sentence. If it's him doodling over another
Yeah.
property, then we've got a little issue of accuracy and exactly who did what.
Okay.
Under the decision for number 2, the variance shall lapse if not exercised within 2 years. Does that mean it needs to be recorded? So that's all that
Nope,
would be?
acted upon.
What's acted upon?
Well, see, that's the other thing, special permits are recording and paying for the building permit within 2 years. That acts on the special permit. So for variances, it might be different. Is it just recording? Is it,
Because it's really just a variance for a property line, which is,
what's he
One house
acting
might not
on?
be
which is
changing.
not, right?
Go to planning within a year for an A&R? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I would definitely think recorded. Well, I mean, it has to be
Well,
recorded
it
right
says
away,
that's
right?
number 1.
Yeah.
Variance shall not take effect
Yeah.
until the applicant files
Yeah.
this variance decision.
Yeah, so I guess what is number 2? I guess that's the question.
We don't have to keep it, it was just in the special permit.
Yeah,
form.
yeah, no, I understand.
And once he records it, the variance.
Right, so there is no number 2, right? There's
No,
nothing
there is no
to
number 2.
exercise.
You can add more, I just went off of what you wrote as a summary.
But if the applicants file the variance 3 years from now, maybe that's why number 2 was in there. I'm sure he wouldn't, but
Just curious why they had red bird and black bird, you know, all of that conversation was so crazy.
It was more confusing at first.
Did you change the date on this one to the site plan?
That's a good point. So the date on the front cover needs to be updated to the date. I guess we have a date of the decision, and then we're gonna have a date of the site plan that when it was received. So I think they would want to just match.
What do you, I'm sorry.
You wouldn't want to have, we're not approving this and then putting the date of the site plan that you haven't received yet.
Oh, okay.
So when you receive that,
If the date changes, right?
it should.
Oh, that's true, because he's,
Tell them
has to
just-
officially do it.
Because there is no date, we want to just know that it's current, and then this whole decision gets dated the same. So it doesn't look fishy that,
After they,
yep.
okay.
Did you guys sign these yet?
If you guys want to, I don't know, does
Um,
anyone want to see the plan before you sign it? Or do you want-
We can make that, we can sign and then make it a condition that Christie will send out the plan. So, I'd make a motion, I'd ask for a motion to accept with the 2 edits, and that the site plan gets sent to me. I'll take a look at the site plan, and if it's
Make a
not what it's
motion to
supposed to be.
accept the draft variance letters with corrections of the date, the site plan.
And the removal of number 2 from part 4 decision.
Number 2, part 4.
I second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is that,
Yeah,
is that a non-attached page?
I think they wanted our feedback, so they're going to go back and make a completely different plan.
I hope so. I had to say it, I know.
Because it's like, oh, we just want your feedback. Oh, you don't like
It's like,
this?
are you sure you want to do it? No, I get you.
Chrissy, are we done? Should we make a motion to close?
No, we got the next one.
What's the next one?
15.
15.
Oh,
You gotta-
Oh, I made corrections on both of them.
Okay, so same corrections to start, but really gotta read page 4, because that's actually different in part G.
Is it unimproved or no way at all?
I think unimproved is the correct terminology.
It is dirt.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a path.
Good. Jack?
Same. Good.
Okay. I'll propose a motion to accept the motion with the following edits. The date on page 1, the date on page 5 for the date of the site plan. Remove number 2 on page 5, which talks about the lapsing in 2 years. And that, although it's not stated here, the process is that I'll get a copy, you'll send me the copy of the updated so I can review it before we make it official.
Absolutely.
Okay. Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, let's sign and then,
And Chrissy, I hate to even bring this up, but you say the record owners of the property are both? I thought he owned one and she owned one, no?
I did check the deeds, they're both listed on each, and it's a
Okay.
different trust name.
Different trust, okay,
Yeah,
very good,
yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Boy, she's good, I'm lucky we have her.
Larry, I got one question for you. In order to get to the planning board,
Yep.
you need a,
Someone will have to do an A&R approval not required plan.
right, but what's the minimum size lot that someone can come to you before you go?
Yeah, I do.
Well, in the absence of a variance, the lot would have to meet zoning requirements, which
Okay.
these would not.
Correct.
Okay, which was the whole point to begin with. But because you've granted the variances, creating these two now non-conforming lots, that those lots become legal, and I wouldn't have any problems signing that.
So then, the next question I have is, and this is sort of to Plum Island, but there's no way they could come, so let's just say it was residential now and they wanted to put 4 units on it. There's just no way they could come to you and they could, would you laugh at them? Like,
Approval, yeah, an A&R plan doesn't, we don't look at that. What we're looking for is that you've got the required frontage and you've got the required lot size, okay? These don't meet the bylaw, but now because of the variance, they have their own special zoning. They meet zoning.
right, so now I'm moving on to 2 Plum Island Boulevard.
Right.
It's just, there's no way to subdivide that lot because it's only 11,000 square
No,
feet.
no.
Just there's no way.
No, you couldn't.
No SORD, no anything, you just couldn't do it. So the triggers that allow someone to do something are the size of the lot. And if they have a reasonable size of the lot and they come before you and they take the avenue of, I'm subdividing this because I have, I don't know, I can do 40,000 square foot lots. I can do a planned subdivision, here's how I'm doing it. I need a little leeway and a little bit of this, but this is how I'm doing it and I'm gonna present it to you. And it's close to zoning, right? They're 40,000, maybe some are a little above, some are a little under. Do you allow that?
No, we couldn't approve that.
So you couldn't approve that?
No,
Okay.
no.
Just, thanks, that's enough.
Actually, I'll take it back. Sometimes we will see a new lot, a small undersized lot created because they're just transferring it to somebody else or because there might be some other reason. You occasionally see it and it's just labeled non-buildable, something like that, you know, in the right circumstance.
But doesn't that then, if it's adjoining my lot and I buy it from you and you give me that little piece?
That's gonna merge with your lot.
It's gonna merge
Yeah,
with my lot.
it's gonna merge with your lot, yeah.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, but they-
Motion to close the meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.